Chapter 1353. Yuan Ling's neck was twisted to the point of breaking. Facing the back of his neck, he activated his energy and his bones crackled as he turned his head around. His neck had almost been broken by Chowda and his head had been struck off? He stared fixedly at Chowda. How did he become a divine king? He was clearly a great saint. It was too unrealistic to cross so many realms in one go. Yuan Ling's aura rose sharply as the energy of a peak divine king surged. His entire body was covered in purple light and millions upon millions of strands of divine light. If he was in the outside world, he would be more than 10 times more resplendent than the sun. His murderous aura was overflowing and the stone jar was filled with his radiance. The purple energy surged and illuminated everything. He was like a divine lord from the legends about to split the world. "Chowda, just who are you?" he shouted. Although he wanted nothing more than to kill the other, he still had too many questions in his heart. "Who am I? I rose in the struggle of the heavens and made the myriad worlds tremble. Of course, you can also call me Chu Feng." He didn't hide it and released his energy here. The inside of the stone jar was isolated from the outside world, and even the heavenly tribulation couldn't sense the aura here. #@Yin. Yuan Ling wanted to slaughter him with his gaze. There was endless coldness in the depths of his eyes. However, he was soon bewildered and his pupils contracted. He felt that the name Chu Feng was a bit familiar. It was as if he had heard of it. Then, his heart jumped as he thought of something. As a celestial, his divine abilities were naturally extraordinary. It was difficult for the information he had heard to disappear from his memory. He had heard of the name Chu Feng. It was related to the ultimate weapon of the Yang realm that was lost in the Lesser Yin realm. Even Taiwu had gone to search for it but ultimately lost his Tao body. One of the ultimate weapons of the Yang realm that was lost in the Lesser Yin realm is related to your name. Yuan Ling's body emitted tens of thousands of dense divine chains to seal off this place. He was worried that the news would leak and he couldn't take the treasure for himself. But he quickly realized that there was no need to do so. This place was completely isolated from the outside world. Interesting. The wandering souls of the Lesser Yin realm actually came to the Yang realm. That place is only a cemetery and you are a creature born there. Yuan Ling locked onto Chu Feng with a blazing gaze. He sized up this space and looked at the wall of the stone jar. He realized what it was. An ultimate artifact of the Yang realm. You took the initiative to give me a treasure. Even though I was humiliated by Yu Shang today, this world is balanced. I will be surprised by you. A bright smile appeared on his face as endless excitement and joy emerged in his heart. At the same time, he was extremely shocked as he had never expected to see an ultimate weapon. In this regard, what else could Chu Feng say? He could only kill him until his mind was clear and let him understand exactly who he had encountered. Chu Feng's entire body was covered in glowing runes, as if he was wrapped in a ball of flame. Actually, that was order, that was the law, and it blossomed with every movement he made. Boom! The great divine king's aura was omnipotent as it filled the space within the stone jar. Chu Feng punched out. His attack power was astonishing and resplendent. If an ordinary god king was hit by his punch, they would explode. What Tao bones? What divine king blood? None of them were enough. They could only be blasted through. Yuan Ling was fearless. He crossed his arms, burning with dazzling purple multicolored light. A shield appeared. This was the development of a wondrous technique. The shield was very special. Scriptures were carved on it, and it vaguely seemed to be connected to a great world. It communicated with the prehistoric era and summoned the energy of a certain forbidden existence. He blocked Chu Feng's punch, but he also concealed his offensive energy. Gotcha. Sure enough, the shield was like a small world with a vast interior. Endless characters condensed and turned into a vast array of stars. It was as if a sea of stars was pouncing out. It was as if a part of the universe was suppressing and carrying lightning. In such a narrow space, the great confrontation between the two was truly terrifying. Other god kings would undoubtedly die here and be crushed into a bloody pulp. In the end, Yuan Ling flew out and crashed into the wall of the stone jar. His body shook violently without end as blood flowed out of his 7 apertures. In the end, blood continuously sprayed out of his mouth. He found it hard to believe that he had actually been defeated. This was the first time they had exchanged blows head-on, yet he was sent flying by a youth. He continuously coughed out blood from his mouth, and never stopped. One had to know that he was still wearing the mother gold armor. Great Divine King? However, I am an Empyrean and have comprehended an even deeper realm. Even though I have fallen, I am still not someone an ordinary person can injure. He was a bit shaken, even more shocked than when he was suppressed by Yu Shang. He truly couldn't accept this. He was actually crushed by a youth in a direct confrontation. I am Chu Feng. Chu Feng looked down on him and said. This type of indifferent and indifferent words made veins appear on Yuan Ling's forehead. However, he realized that he had fallen into a dangerous situation. If it wasn't for the mother gold armor shining just now, he might have been in danger. Unfortunately, this mother gold armor's interwoven natural laws and other things had been destroyed by Yu Shang. It fell from the Empyrean level and became a Divine King artifact. Suddenly Yuan Ling shone. Divine patterns gushed out from his pores and a mortal sword-like order flew out from his eyes. They evolved into 9 sword cores and formed a sword domain that swept over. Chu Feng felt a bit threatened. He could vaguely see the Empyrean profound mysteries within. The small world within the stone jar exploded and the void split apart. Black cracks extended outwards, all of which were caused by the 9 swords. However, it was a bit unfortunate that this still wasn't a true Empyrean domain. It was only a sword domain at the peak of Divine King realm. The 9 sword cores were like 9 true dragons emerging into the world. Their aura was boundless as they tore apart the void. Boom! Chu Feng's entire body shone and white mist gushed out from his mouth and nose. He combined his breathing technique with his ultimate fist, and a pair of sparkling fists smashed into the 9 sword cores. Amidst the deafening sounds of metal colliding, the 9 orderly sword cores wailed. In the end, all of them exploded and energy surged. This kind of thing happening in such a narrow space was simply like hell. One could see that after the sword core exploded, there were countless strands of sword energy that cut through space. They interweaved densely on Yuan Ling's body, causing his forehead, cheeks, and hands to be heavily injured. Blood dripped everywhere and white bones could be seen. Even though the other parts of his body were protected by armor, they were still struck until they caved in. He coughed out blood again and again. Needless to say, if these 9 sword cores exploded in the outside world, it would be enough to evaporate great rivers and destroy magnificent mountains and rivers. They possess the power to sever the heavens. Chu Feng chanted scriptures. Countless symbols surrounded his body. His hands changed into millstones and moved horizontally in front of him to obliterate all the incoming sword energy and protect himself from harm. In addition, the diamond chakram also appeared and suspended above his head. Millions and millions of strands of divine multicolored light scattered down and slowly revolved to protect him. Even if some sword energy broke through, it would be swallowed up by the black hole within the diamond chakram and disappear without a trace. Chi. Yuan Ling didn't stop. The battle blood within his body was boiling. He naturally wasn't willing to be suppressed by a youth. This was related to his life and death. His face was already a small matter and could be ignored. At this moment, his body was continuously emitting pi-pa sounds. A pair of golden wings appeared on his back and flickered. Orders surged forward like a tidal wave. In addition, a horn grew out from his head and his entire body displayed an extraordinary body. Apart from this, He was chanting scriptures as if he was communicating with a realm and summoning a power that didn't belong to him. What are you still doing? Go die. Chu Feng attacked with the intent to kill. The diamond chakram suddenly smashed out. With a ping sound, Yuan Ling's powerful divine king body almost exploded. If it weren't for the protection of the mother gold armor, his bones and muscles would have been broken and he would have turned into a bloody mist. Even though he flew out like this, he almost disintegrated as he smashed into the stone wall. His divine king body disappeared, but in the blink of an eye, his soul light ignited again. He was like a phoenix undergoing nirvana as his terrifying body reappeared. This was especially the case when behind him, purple mists surged. A figure appeared, as if it came from several great eras before. On its back were all types of great Tao weapons, condensing an unmatched magical body. It rushed forward murderously, attacking together with Yuan Ling ultimate fist. Wonderful seven treasures technique. Robbery induction breathing technique. Golden characters appeared on the stone millstone. So what if you were an Empyrean? You are still a divine king. Chu Feng directly attacked with powerful methods. As a result, Yuan Ling's body disintegrated and became tattered within the mother gold armor. The most important thing was that the figure in the purple mist behind him was blasted through and scattered. Chi. The diamond chakram flew out and confined Yuan Ling within. Moreover, the snow-white precious chakram continuously shone. Following a kacha sound, the mother gold armor on Yuan Ling's body dimmed and turned into ordinary gold. Then, it shattered and turned into fine powder. At the same time, Chu Feng discovered with amazement that there was multicolored light flowing into his diamond chakram. It absorbed the essence. This transformation was extremely astonishing. Yuan Ling fell to the ground. He was in tatters and almost didn't look like a human anymore. He had turned into a pile of rotten flesh. I never thought that a place like the little underworld, a cemetery that has existed since ancient times, would actually have a wandering soul grow to this extent. He sighed. He was unwilling and in despair. He felt that it was absurd that an Empyrean-level existence like him was actually going to die in the hands of a youth. What did you say? What's wrong with the little underworld? Why is it a cemetery? Chu Feng asked. Everyone in my generation knows that all life there was exterminated in the past. It is a cemetery that has existed since time immemorial. Star after star, burial earth after burial earth, they were all buried by emperors. How could a creature like you appear in this era? Could it be that you are a heroic soul that ran out from some prehistoric grave? Yuan Ling looked at him with a skeptical gaze. He knew that he was going to die, but he still wanted to understand Chu Feng's route. He found it hard to believe that a creature from the little underworld could be this powerful. A youth like him could kill an expert that had walked the path of an Empyrean. Chu Feng interrogated him, wanting him to talk about the little underworld's past and the Yuan clan's secret. However, after being interrogated like this, Yuan Ling sneered and didn't speak anymore. Since you're pretending to be mute, what use do I have for you? Chu Feng walked forward and trampled him to death with a single foot. His body and soul were extinguished, and blood splashed onto the ground. He opened the stone jar and fiercely shook it. Some ashes were shaken off, cleaning up this narrow battlefield. The little underworld was a cemetery. This was something Chu Feng had heard before, but now that Yuan Ling spoke of it, he still felt that it was strange and abnormal. This was especially the case when it involved a higher-level ultimate existence. He had personally buried himself there. What was the reason for this? In addition, Number 9 had also said that someone had imitated his birthplace. That blue star was extremely extraordinary, so there were naturally some unforeseen events that happened here. Moreover, that large black dog had also stared at his face and revealed a strange expression. It had an unfathomable expression and even told him to find the Empress. There was definitely some inside story. Chu Feng traversed through this small secret realm in search of opportunities. He had long sensed that this place was strange, so he didn't want Yuan Ling to destroy the secret realm and instead put him into the stone jar to fight. In an instant, he arrived at the depths of the secret realm. He saw many people lying on the road as if they were sleeping. There was an expanse of shining ripples in front of him. It was like a land of reincarnation, making one fall asleep and forget everything. This is the Sea of Reincarnation? He was astonished because when he arrived here, he also swayed and almost fainted. He used his fiery eyes to see the truth. The power of reincarnation and rebirth pervaded the air. It was too strong. The most important thing was that this place made one's soul light leave their body and resonate continuously. It was as if they were going to reveal all kinds of things from their past lives. At the same time, there were strange chanting sounds. It was as if dusk had arrived in the underworld and the souls of the heavens were hurrying to a certain place. All kinds of signs and everything was the same as recorded in the history book. This was the legendary lake of reincarnation? After arriving in the Yang realm, Chu Feng had researched all kinds of ancient secrets. Apart from asking Li Su and the others about Old Gu, he had also inquired about all kinds of special secrets, including many strange objects. That was why he was now certain that this was the Sea of Reincarnation. Although it was called a sea, it was actually only a few square feet. It was a very small body of water. Chu Feng forcefully raised his spirits. He walked over and gazed into the lake. He wanted to see if he had a past life or an afterlife. In essence, he didn't really believe in the theory of fate. He believed that reincarnation was nothing more than a material transition of life. It was a path and not an inherent predestination. But at this moment, he was horrified. What did he see? He stared at the several square feet of water and felt a chill run down his spine. He felt that he had seen a corner of the terrifying truth. Midnight update equal to the next day? Alright, since that was the case, the next chapter will be updated at noon. Please remember this book's original domain name. Third Sect Masters Mobile Version. Chapter 1354. There was a blurry silhouette of Chu Feng in the several square feet of water, but it wasn't a reflection. Instead, it was a reflection of the past events of a certain era. This made him horrified. Could it be that he really had a past life? This somewhat subverted his understanding. He had always believed that coming from the lesser Yin realm was a kind of material reincarnation and not the reincarnation of fate. It was equivalent to reconstructing his corporeal body. But now, he saw an ancient scene. A creature that seemed to be him appeared, but that gaze was too sharp, as if it was going to shoot out through the water. This made Chu Feng feel a burning pain, as if he had been struck by 2 bolts of lightning and burned by the strongest heavenly tribulation. As a great divine king, even he couldn't bear it. Was that his past life from a long time ago? How was this possible? No matter what, he found it a little hard to believe and somewhat unacceptable. Chu Feng didn't believe in fate. He didn't think that he was someone else's reincarnation, but only himself. Even if he had secretly crossed the path of reincarnation, he was still himself. But now, he actually received this kind of impact on his understanding. He was someone else? Who could accept and believe this sudden realization? He didn't want to be someone else's shadow. After suddenly awakening, he discovered that he wasn't himself. That was the saddest thing. Chu Feng stared at the water. The several square feet of sparkling water was like a terrifying world, deep and boundless. It didn't look big, but it gave people the feeling that it was vast and boundless, as if the universe was condensed. In a trance, he saw the sun, moon, and stars revolving. Countless giant planets were arranged and resonating, about to rush out of the water. There, himself stood tall, as if he was overlooking something, as if he was reminiscing about something, as if he was reminiscing about the past. Inadvertently, that person's gaze streaked across millions of spacetime and landed on Chu Feng's body, making him feel as if his entire body was about to burn. That person was very strong. Even though the figure was blurry and separated by endless spacetime, and it was a normal glance, it made the great divine king-level Chu Feng feel as if he was being burned by immortal fire. How terrifying was this gaze! Very soon, he calmed down. There was no need to panic when encountering problems, and he should solve them. He stared at this very small pool of water, seriously thinking. Was this real? Right at this time, he felt a wave of dizziness, as if he was going to faint. In this region, not far from the Sea of Reincarnation, there were many people lying on the ground, all of them unable to endure the aura of this place. It was as if they entered an eternal sleep, falling into a deep sleep. The stone jar on Chu Feng's body shook slightly, and a strand of sparkling and translucent luster flowed out, waking him up instantly. A wave of coolness enveloped his body, and he was no longer drowsy. He was shocked. If he fainted here, would he never get up again? Would he die here? He looked at the swamp again. The scene and the figure inside were moving and not simply presented. There was still a follow-up, and it was still developing and developing. Bronze. He sucked in a breath of cold air. He was sure that he was not seeing things. In that scene, the aura of primal chaos was surging, and he saw a corner of the rusty bronze. Previously, when he first glanced at the swamp, he vaguely saw that there seemed to be a coffin floating past. However, it was very blurry, and he wasn't too sure. He only momentarily felt his blood run cold. But now, he was sure that there really was a bronze coffin. It appeared again, submerging into the clouds and mist of the swamp. This made Chu Feng want nothing more than to smash through the Sea of Reincarnation with a palm and scatter the mist. He was too shocked to see it clearly. This was because the bronze coffin he saw was extremely familiar. When he was on the first mountain, Number 9 had shown him an ancient memory, and there was a bronze coffin in those scenes. Some people sat on the bronze coffin and left, watching the myriad worlds bleed, watching the heavens turn dark red under the setting sun. It was lonely and desolate. There were also people who placed themselves in coffins. They didn't know where they started or where they ended, and they floated silently in the dark and cold cosmos. Now Chu Feng saw a bronze coffin here. It was of the same style, and it was floating there. Could it be related to his past life? What kind of situation was this? He felt a wave of suspicion, and even guessed that this sea of reincarnation was real. Could it be that someone had deliberately set up a trap, or that this swamp had long since developed intelligence and was plotting against him? He shivered because he really didn't believe that he had any connection with the bronze coffin. Chu Feng stared at the several square feet of sparkling puddle, staring fixedly at the scene inside. Then, his body trembled because he saw an even more astonishing scene. He vaguely saw 2 coffins and not one. Moreover, both of them were accompanied. His hair stood on end. What kind of situation was this? In his past life, he didn't just tangle with 1 coffin, but 2? In the end, Chu Feng's eyes were hurting from staring. Then, he immediately saw the 3rd coffin, but there was no one there. It was empty and crossed over. The situation is strange and absurd. He felt that this was somewhat unbelievable. Chu Feng looked around. He was a bit suspicious. Could it be that someone was targeting him, triggering all kinds of illusions? No matter how he looked at it, he felt that it was too strange and sinister. He really didn't believe that he had a past life, and it was suspected that his origins were shocking. What kind of place is that? Then, he saw the countless giant planets in the swamp. All of them were deathly still, withered, and lifeless. The entire cosmos was like a graveyard. It was somewhat like the little underworld. However, the little underworld Chu Feng was in now had life, and many planets full of vitality had appeared. In a split second, he thought of Yuan Ling's words. The little underworld was once a mausoleum, buried by the emperor himself. There were countless corpses there to bury the past. Could it be that what Yuan Ling said was true? And now, through the sea of reincarnation, he saw an endless and unprecedented scene? Who am I? Chu Feng asked himself. He thought of number 9's words again. There was an unfathomable supreme character who had once played out everything on Earth and reproduced some old events? What did this mean? At that time, he was still somewhat puzzled and doubtful. But now, he felt as if he had grasped a wisp of the truth. He had a guess in his heart, but it made him tremble with fear. Chu Feng was truly horrified. He felt a chill run down his spine from head to toe. Even his soul light was emitting cold air. It was as if his entire body had been sealed in ice and was frozen there. If you didn't understand some things and didn't understand them, perhaps it would be more peaceful. But when you suddenly discover the truth one day and unveil a wisp of dense fog, you would feel a kind of fear. Who am I in the end? What roots do I have? In the past, he only thought of himself as a new life body without any messy past. But now, his scalp was numb. Could it be that there's something strange about this place and someone is plotting against me? They're purposely misleading me and making me overthink things, he muttered. Terrifying golden runes appeared in his eyes as he swept his surroundings with the fiery eyes. He wanted to see through this place and see if there was anything strange. In the end, he didn't discover anything. This place was deathly still and soundless. There were simply no other awakened creatures or special soul power fluctuations. Chu Feng took out the stone jar and stroked it with his hand. After that, he prepared to touch the sea of reincarnation with this unique ancient artifact. There was a saying that in order to unravel the mystery of one's own reincarnation, one only needed to break through the sea of reincarnation. However, not many people could do it. The sea of reincarnation couldn't be touched and couldn't be explored. Once its tranquility was forcefully broken, one would be swallowed up and consigned to eternal damnation. They would never reappear again. Only special creatures, supreme powerhouses, and extremely powerful individuals could attempt it. Or perhaps, only those who grasped a supreme treasure could explore it. Chu Feng believed that the stone jar was absolutely heaven-defying. After all, it had existed for several epochs and had risen and fallen on different branches of evolution. It definitely had a gargantuan origin. I'll break the tranquility of the sea of reincarnation. I want to see what truth lies beneath the water and what secrets will be revealed to me. He moved and suddenly pressed the stone jar down. Chapter 1355. Chu Feng abruptly retreated because just as the stone jar was about to touch the surface of the water, he saw a face. Although it was his own face, it was smiling so devilishly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth that were stained with a few strands of blood. He looked like he had just eaten someone. The blood was very beautiful, and it seemed to have meat in it. It appeared so terrifying, cold, and terrifying. This did not seem like the reappearance of the past, nor did it seem like an old event from his previous life. Instead, it seemed to be happening right in front of his eyes. This caused Chu Feng's pupils to contract. With a bang, the surface of the water broke open, and a pale palm stretched out. It was himself, and it grabbed towards him. Its fingernails were stained with blood. Chu Feng quickly retreated and stared at him with his fiery eyes. There was indeed a problem with this sea of reincarnation. The surface of the lake was still and motionless, only revealing himself. He was laughing eerily there, cold and terrifying. If you really could do anything to me, you would have done so long ago. Why do you need to scare me like this? Chu Feng said coldly. Then, he no longer hesitated. He lifted the stone jar and rushed over, directly pressing it down. He believed that, if the other party could harm him, he would have done so long ago. Why bother to scare him like this? Bah! The sparkling surface of the water suddenly cracked like a mirror, and then water splashed in all directions. The eerie face in the water suddenly distorted, and then quickly disappeared. But as the waves surged, there was also blood splashing. Suddenly, A mournful scream almost pierced through one's eardrums, breaking the original tranquility. It suddenly exploded, and it was very shocking. Even Chu Feng was shocked. This area was relatively calm just now, and such a sudden explosion of such a high decibel could almost penetrate one's brain. It was really a bit frightening. Then, he saw himself under the water, covered in blood. He seemed very down and out, and also very miserable. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes were dripping with blood. "You're finally here. Have you remembered who you are? Everything in the world is in the cycle of reincarnation, including a grain of dust, a vast sea, a blade of grass, a boundless cosmic sea of stars, the mortal world of 6 desires, and the heavenly realms. You and I are all fighting to cross the sky full of dust, floating in the long river of time. Life and death are difficult, fighting to cross the river in vain, or 100 barges vying for the current. How should we choose? Through the darkness, through the sea of light, from ignorance to clarity, you have come here to become one with me. The real you and I are about to awaken." That voice sounded from beneath the surface of the water. That person actually gave off an ancient feeling, as well as a feeling of loneliness and desolation. "You are me." Chu Feng stared at him with the stone jar in his hand. "Yes, you and I are one. You are my next life, and I am your previous life. I have been waiting for you here for many years." The man under the water was like a true dragon hibernating in the abyss, waiting to come out of the abyss and soar into the 9 heavens. That kind of restrained sharp aura gradually spread out, and his entire person became imposing like a mountain, like the boundless universe, becoming more and more terrifying. Chu Feng shook his head, his eyes blazing. He said in a low voice, "If you were my previous life, how could you be here? Whether you reincarnated or not, you are the same person. How could you separate into 2 souls? I was afraid that the reincarnation would fail and leave behind a remnant spirit. This can't be considered a true soul, but rather an obsession of mine. I am here to protect the Tao fruit of our previous lives. Today you have returned, and we will rise again. We will look down on the heavens, punch through the heavens, and kill our way back." The man's voice was low, and in the end, he suddenly raised his head. There was a kind of domineering aura that looked down on the past, present, and future. His eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning, about to shine out. "How did you know that I would come here? That I would meet you again one day?" Chu Feng asked a step further. The man under the water said, "Because back then, you and I were powerful enough to stand at the top of the pyramid of the road of evolution. We could see a corner of the future, see through the boundless years, and see through the obstruction of time. At that moment, you and I foresaw the arrival of you in this life." "You can foresee the future?" Chu Feng revealed a strange expression. "Perhaps you don't know how powerful you and I were back then. I was the celestial emperor, and who could oppose me?" When the man under the water said this, his aura suddenly rose. He really wanted to intimidate the 33 heavens, and no one dared to oppose him. Chu Feng seriously suspected that if he didn't have the stone jar on him, would he directly explode under this kind of aura, or perhaps he would collapse to the ground and shiver. Then, Chu Feng saw a shocking scene. In the old scene of the past, that person's aura was too powerful. After opening a palm, he actually grabbed the universe, and the darkness shattered. That enormous palm entered another world. What kind of mighty power was this? With a lift of his hand, he severed 2 worlds and tore the heavens apart. And when he opened his mouth, billions of stars dimmed. As he breathed, the river of time became chaotic. In the end, he strode forward, 1 epoch at a time. He went against the flow of time and disturbed the past and present. He killed his way out of the world and watched as the myriad worlds were dyed in blood. He saw the flourishing sky fall, and in the bloody sunset, he entered the land of the eternal unknown. He pierced through the darkness, crossed the light, and entered the land of change. The golden runes in Chu Feng's eyes flickered violently. His fiery eyes shone brightly as he raised his power to the extreme to see everything. You and I have unfinished wishes. What you see is only half of our journey. We failed and fell halfway through, perishing in an accident. There is still half of the journey that we haven't finished. In this life we will continue our broken path, slaughter our way through, and reach our true destination. The man under the water said with a resolute gaze. He raised his fist and shook it. In the reincarnation of time, he pierced through the heavens. Chu Feng was silent as he looked at him. After a long time, he said, "Since you can see the future, do you think I will believe you? What kind of choice will I make? Naturally, it will be to become one with me. Perhaps you are conflicted in your heart, but you are me and I am you. And after you and I become one, my final obsession will completely dissipate. All of the past will become clouds and smoke, and from then on, you will be the one to walk this world. What you want to inherit is our Tao fruit. We will let you return to your position earlier. Your strength is too weak. How can you reach the end like this? How can you continue on those broken roads? You don't know what you will face in the future. Those creatures, those substances, those existences can cause rivers of blood to flow with a flick of their fingers. They can cause chaos in the heavens and earth, and they can cause the past, present, and future to never have peace." After hearing this, Chu Feng fell silent again. After a long time, he said, "Then what do I have to do? How can I become one with you?" A sigh came from under the water's surface. Then, the waves surged and a snow-white skeleton appeared. It was sparkling and translucent like mutton fat jade. It was like a work of art, like the most perfect masterpiece of the heavens. The only pity was that upon closer inspection, there were many fine cracks on the snow-white skeleton. As it gradually emerged from the water's surface, one could see that many bones were broken. One could imagine how bitter the battle back then was. In the scene of the past, he was so powerful. But now, as the skeleton continuously emerged and appeared complete, he was actually badly damaged. This made the murderous aura of the past even more fierce and terrifying. Even though countless years had passed, the blade scars and sword holes on the skeleton were still emitting an energy aura that made people want to explode. It was horrifying. At this moment, the stone jar was glowing. The aura flowing through the scars on a skeleton actually caused the stone jar to undergo such a strange change. How could Chu Feng not be shocked? Chu Feng was shaken. It was really rare for the stone jar to undergo an abnormal change. It had undergone a special change on the reincarnation path. It had also undergone an abnormal change when it faced a wooden city where a sword had once slashed through the ancient ruins. And now it was like this again. Hong! Suddenly Chu Feng moved. With the stone jar in hand, he fiercely smashed it towards the snow-white skeleton that was full of crack. It was abrupt and fierce, without the slightest bit of leniency. It was incomparably decisive. "What are you doing?" That person sighed softly and didn't resist. With a kacha sound, the stone jar directly smashed into the skeleton, making it tremble endlessly. Then, it broke apart and scattered, unable to form a whole. Chu Feng's gaze was resolute. With the stone jar in hand, he stared at the scattered skeleton. "I just knew that it was just like the scene I saw back then. You didn't believe in your past life and only believed in this one. However, it doesn't matter. I will still give you everything, because you are me and I am you." At this time, waves of golden multicolored light rose from the scattered skeleton. It was too dazzling and divine. It was as if a blazing sun had risen, illuminating all things. It was warm and full of exuberant vitality. "This is the Tao fruit of our past lives. It's for you," that person said sentimentally. Then, he said softly, incomparably lonely, "I will vanish like smoke into thin air. You will always be you. Live on properly, continue fighting. You are still on the road. In this life, you will complete the things that the other person and I weren't able to complete back then." The radiance was dazzling, as if a cosmos furnace was crushing down. It was blazing and scorching, possessing boundless energy like a sea. It covered heaven and earth just like that. That man gradually became weak, his eyes growing dim, his face gradually becoming indistinct. With a final gloomy expression, he said, "Take care of yourself. I hope you are safe and sound in this life. Break through the broken path and reach that place. I hope you won't have any regrets in your next life." Chapter 1356. That blurry face seemed to be filled with reluctance. His eyes were devoid of spirit, filled with sadness and desolation. He was fading away, declining, about to be obliterated. Correspondingly, dazzling golden light surged, exuberant vitality filling the air towards Chu Feng. Was that his past life's Tao fruit? Even though the skeleton was scattered by him, that rich vitality and energy, as well as the primordial laws that had been thoroughly comprehended, still appeared, about to merge with him. Chu Feng remained silent. Only when the resplendent Tao fruit, as well as the profound and unfathomable great Tao patterns wrapped around him, did he make a move. 1. The void rumbled, heaven and earth seemingly about to collapse. He attacked again, the stone jar in his hand resolutely smashing into that dazzling golden light. He was extremely decisive, without the slightest bit of hesitation, directly using the great divine King Tao fruit, displaying his most powerful energy, using the stone jar to suppress and kill. The stone jar's current state was extremely special. Ever since the snow-white skeleton appeared, it was stimulated by some type of mysterious energy. It released sparkling brilliance, itself sparkling and translucent. And at this moment, the stone jar erupted with even more shocking brilliance, striking the Tao fruit within the golden multicolored light, immediately triggering terrifying consequences. A black hole appeared, as if it pierced through the starry sea of the cosmos, blasting into another realm. However, as the stone jar shone, a few blurry diagrams on its surface became clear. Those were magnificent mountains and valleys, boundless great rivers, and other things. When they were grouped together, they formed the terrifying terrain of legends, for example, the revered 8 trigrams furnace, immortal master decapitation peak, 9 heavens collapsing great valley, and others. Now, there were so many dangerous lands, terrifying terrains of legends from ancient times until now. It was as if they had truly reappeared, gathered together, displaying their might. The mountains and valleys covered this place, surrounding the sea of reincarnation, even freezing the shattered void. This place recovered its tranquility. Chu Feng himself was shocked, not expecting this type of irregular scene to appear. In the past, when the stone jar changed, he had seen blurry diagrams on its surface, a terrain map. However, he had never thought that these terrains could be reflected like this, displaying unrivaled might. This region was locked down. The sea of reincarnation was restricted, no longer collapsing. Meanwhile, that Tao fruit continued to crack apart after being smashed by the stone jar. Golden light poured out in torrents, great Tao patterns breaking apart. Its energy decreased sharply, quickly scattering. There was a sigh of desolation and loneliness. The blurry and dim figure under the water seemed to be lamenting the end of a hero. Why? This is the Tao fruit of our past lives. It gave you unsurpassed power and allowed you to fight in outer space. It helped you repair your broken path. Why did you destroy it? He was extremely weak, feeling a type of powerlessness, even more so as if he was disheartened. What a pity! Could it be that you insist on forging your own path? Fine, I hope you have a good life in this life. You will become stronger after nirvana and surpass the me from my previous life. In this life you are yourself. Chu Feng said nothing. That person sighed again and said, "Erase all traces of me. Cut off the past and move forward courageously. Tread on your unique path. I'm willing to turn into ashes and recite eternity for you in reincarnation. I wish for you to become stronger. Now, I'm going to destroy my previous life. Goodbye." The figure in the water sank, continuously twisting and becoming blurry. It was about to disappear. Chu Feng unexpectedly attacked again, blasting through the water surface and smashing into the depths of the sea of reincarnation. He didn't show the slightest bit of mercy, personally suppressing the me of his previous life. Why? Even if you want to cut off the past and erase your past life, there is no need to be so heartless? I can just do it myself. Why do you have to personally take action? A weak and sorrowful voice sounded from below the water surface. It seemed to be puzzled and extremely cold. Demons and monsters, you want to deceive me? Die. Chu Feng released another attack. He held the stone jar in hand without any fear. He believed that if the other party could do anything to him, he wouldn't compromise like this, directly taking action. Water splashed in all directions, rushing into the height of a person. Moreover, the sparkling sea of reincarnation changed, becoming like liquid after a corpse rotted, terrifyingly yellow. Moreover, at this moment, a mournful cry sounded from below the water surface. How did you see through it? Why didn't you have the slightest bit of hesitation? Did you really believe that you made the right gamble? It is because you don't possess the temperament of a celestial emperor. You are not the same type of person as me. True celestial emperors, who would be overcautious and indecisive, leaving behind any future lives, what obsessions! If I was a celestial emperor, how could I believe in something like being stronger in the next life? I would naturally believe in myself in this life, never losing, never placing my hopes on the future. In this world I am unmatched, Chu Feng said coldly, berating this person. He then said, you don't have that type of boldness. Regardless of whether there is reincarnation or not, true celestial emperors wouldn't care. What they care about is the present world's body, believing that they are destined to be unrivaled throughout the ages and in the future. How could they be as weak as you, leaving behind some past life Tao fruit? You don't match my Chu Feng's temperament at all. If there really was a past life like me, my aura would devour the world, my flesh able to sever past and present, yet you are too slow. Motherf ****. The creature underwater was furious. He was said to be completely useless, as if he wasn't even worthy of carrying the Celestial Emperor's shoes. He was extremely angry, almost spitting out blood. He wanted to deal a killing blow. However, his special state was that he was powerless despite having the will to do so. He was imprisoned here, and the few symbols and laws he could release were pierced through by the stone jar, scattering apart. Moreover, Chu Feng didn't allow him to say anything else. The stone jar in his hand fiercely smashed into the water, continuously vibrating. He already saw that the stone jar was in a special state after shining, using this to suppress and kill evil. Don't you want to see the secrets of your past life? This is the sea of reincarnation, and a copper coffin has appeared. You might have an inseparable intimate relationship with some people. An urgent voice sounded from the water. That creature trembled, fearing that he would be obliterated. It was because the aura released by the stone jar was too terrifying, as if it was specially aimed at restraining his race. Everything was guided by you, how could I believe you? Chu Feng said coldly. The stone jar became increasingly resplendent like a small sun, about to evaporate the sea of reincarnation. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't evaporating, but rather absorbing the essence of the water. The sparkling and resplendent liquid was absorbed into the mountain and river's topographic map on the stone jar, forming a puddle there. Chu Feng immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He was shaken. Could it be that the so-called special topographic map on the stone jar had all been absorbed before? According to his understanding after entering the Yang realm, this kind of topographic map could even kill the most powerful old monsters in the Yang realm. This was also the reason why famous mountains and great rivers were so dangerous. It could kill the universe and exterminate fallen immortal kings. It was truly boundlessly dangerous. And now there were more traces of the Sea of Reincarnation on the topographic map. It was another dangerous land. The water surface dropped, revealing a jar with a creature sealed within. And at this moment, the stone jar broke away from Chu Feng's palm on its own and suddenly sank down. With a paw sound, the jar was smashed to pieces, as if a vast and boundless great world had been broken. Even the world outside was about to be destroyed. That kind of aura was too terrifying. At the crucial moment, the mountain and river's topographic map reappeared, covering this place again and fixing everything in place. A mass of black light rushed out from the broken jar and wailed mournfully. It wanted to struggle free, but in the end it was burned by the light emitted by the stone jar. In the end it dimmed and was on the verge of disintegration, about to vanish into thin air. No, I'm the son of darkness. How could I die? One day, I will see the light of day again and descend upon the world once more. I will look down on the myriad worlds, make all life submit, and flatten the heavens above and the earth below. What kind of energy is this? What kind of jar is this? Ah, no. He screamed miserably, but his voice grew weaker and weaker. At the same time, one could clearly feel that he was terrified, panic-stricken, and incomparably terrified. It was as if he had seen something extremely horrifying. A creature's face emerged from the collapsing mass of black light. He stared fixedly at the stone jar, his face full of alarm. At the final moment before his death, he seemed to have realized something. I was deceived and became a testing stone. The creature hiding at the spirit river deceived me. This isn't the tribulation I should be facing at all. He used me as bait to deal with the corner of truth he saw, to deal with that weapon. I truly am pitiful. I am but the son of darkness. When Chu Feng heard this, he was shocked. There really was someone who could see a corner of the future, and thus calmly deal with it? This was especially the case when he heard the words, Spirit River. His ears were ringing with wung-wung sounds, feeling like the problem was too serious, that things had become too big. It was because he already understood from that large black dog's mouth that there were celestial emperors who fought their way to the Spirit River. When they slaughtered their way in, they paid a heavy price. Moreover, the most crucial thing was that there was a secret at the limits of the Spirit River. Those people missed it, celestial emperors not even discovering it. They didn't truly slaughter their way to the end, there was still a hidden final trial. It was to the extent where even earlier, the one number 9 spoke of, a single sword severing the heavens, severing endless ages. That creature also overlooked that place. Even though he had suspicions, he still didn't dig up the limits of the Spirit River. It's all of you. You really treated me as bait. You saw me imprisoned, yet you didn't take action to save me, deceiving me to continue waiting for opportunities. I hate you. In the black light, the creature who called himself the Dark Son of Heaven roared loudly. At this moment, he saw a special scene. After the bottom of the sea of reincarnation dried up, it actually gradually cracked. Then, sparkling and translucent energy flowed and filled the air. In the end, sparkling and translucent energy interweaved, actually constructing a path. It quickly extended outwards and emitted wave after wave of ripples. It was a very familiar aura. That path was too strange. Chu Feng's pupils contracted. What did he sense? It was like the reincarnation road. However, this reincarnation road was very special. It was formed from energy, moreover, it emitted circle after circle of ripples. It was as if they had formed a net, and at the center of the net was a deep passage. He could vaguely hear the sound of flowing river water, as well as the anguished wailing of countless souls. It was extremely terrifying, making even his scalp go numb. Spirit River! The Dark Son of Heaven shouted loudly. His soul light dimmed, disintegrating, and was on the verge of completely disappearing. That kind of ripple extended out from the Spirit River, spreading outwards along the entire reincarnation road, as if it was exploring and sensing everything here. This was very similar to the tangible ultrasonic waves emitted by bats, probing the road ahead and sensing the unknown situation. Chu Feng was horrified. He saw the Soul River so early. Was there a creature reviving there? Things were not looking good. The stone jar shone like a lamp. In the boundless mist, it flickered on the dried-up sea of reincarnation. It was lightly crying and trembling, as if it was going to attack the Spirit River. Chapter 1357. Soul River. This was such a terrifying name. Chu Feng knew that it was a place of extreme evil and unfathomable power. Back then, the master of the large black dog, the powerful being who ultimately died on the Broken Bell, had once stepped on the ultimate path of reincarnation with an empress and another supreme celestial emperor, all for the sake of fighting their way to the Soul River. Needless to say, the celestial emperors had joined forces and had to kill their way there. That was definitely the most terrifying and strange place in history. Otherwise, how could it be like this? Back then, the celestial emperors had traveled together and paid a great price to finally kill their way to the Soul River. Along the way, who knew how many terrifying dangers they had encountered? After all, the Soul River was at the end of the path of reincarnation, in the deepest depths. How could ordinary people reach it? And it was impossible to even hear of it. In this world, the number of people who truly knew of that place could be counted on one's fingers. They had all seen it from the remnant tablets left behind from the most ancient times, or seen through from the heavens. One could imagine Chu Feng's current mood. Even the celestial emperors had to pay a heavy price to reach that place, and he was about to see it now? What cultivation level was he at? To come into contact with the Soul River so early, he would definitely die. He had learned a terrifying truth from the mouth of the Son of Darkness. Back then, a long time ago, in that unknown and uncivilized era, or rather, in the unspeakable era before myths, someone had predicted the future and sensed that he would come here? Perhaps it could be said that someone had predicted that a supreme weapon, the stone jar, would appear again and release some power here. Was that creature testing the might of the stone jar through the Son of Darkness? It was fearful, extremely fearful. Chu Feng stared at the sparkling net. It was like a tangible ripple, or like an ultrasonic wave pattern, spreading over, forming a reincarnation path. At the end of the Soul River, what about the creature there? It's not there. The Son of Darkness was shocked. He had some understanding of that place and seemed to have sensed something. No one can predict the truth of the future, not even it. It missed today's opportunity. The Son of Darkness sighed. Then, his indistinct face stared in that direction and said with a trembling voice, "What exactly is at the end of the Soul River? It came from there, but I know that it also holds that place in great reverence." These words were truly earth-shattering, and it caused Chu Feng to be lost in thought. He calmed his heart and listened to the sound of the Soul River flowing. He wanted to see through this strange land and see what kind of secrets it was hiding. Even Sky Emperor missed it in the end, unable to enter the limits of the Soul River. There was a final trial there, one that no one had ever entered before. Suddenly, a layer of goosebumps appeared all over Chu Feng's body. He felt a tidal force expanding from the special reincarnation path formed from energy. It made him rise and fall along with it. Meanwhile, the brilliance of the stone jar rushed into the heavens. It was unprecedentedly resplendent, as if it had ignited the 33 heavens. Everything in the world was going to burn along with it. Then, his heart began to throb and he felt a chill run down his spine. He felt as if he was about to touch upon the legendary domain that no one had ever seen before, the mysterious final stage. Huh! He was horrified because, unknowingly, there were actually many figures that appeared beside him. They stood shoulder to shoulder, giving off an incomparably oppressive feeling. "Who are you?" He was too engrossed just now and actually didn't notice. One bizarre creature after another appeared at his side and behind him, all of them like walking corpses. It was like the dusk of the Legion of Gods, who had heard the song of guiding souls, and were now on a path of no return. They lost their souls and were now on their way to the Yellow Springs. This was like a group of dead gods, a group of creatures without consciousness. All of them emitted a dangerous aura, and their eyes were all closed. However, 2 streaks of dark red blood flowed from the corners of their eyes. At the same time, they were all smiling eerily, revealing their white teeth and looking very terrifying. These creatures came from all directions and weren't far from the sea of reincarnation. Upon closer inspection, they were all the evolvers that had fainted on the ground not long ago. At this moment, their temperaments were too demonic. They had all become living corpses, and the most terrifying thing was that the wisps of aura they emitted were all above the god level. However, that kind of energy didn't pour out in torrents and was sealed in their bodies. It was only because Chu Feng was especially sensitive that he could sense their state. What was going on? Most of the people who entered this secret realm were originally saints? But now, how did they become a group of dead gods? The river of souls exists eternally, the tides surge, and the souls of the heavens fall. It has been like this since before the fall of the emperors. The son of darkness actually hadn't died yet. His remnant spirit was trembling in the net-like passage and wailing. He seemed to have recalled some terrifying record. While feeling horrified, Chu Feng didn't interrupt him. He wanted to hear the son of darkness' true thoughts and what exactly it would reveal. He unexpectedly heard that all people and all creatures had the potential to become gods. They could all leap through the 9 heavens, and the surging river of souls would guide them away, allowing them to release their potential in advance. The son of darkness died. Even with the support of the net-like passage of the reincarnation road, he was still turned to ashes under the illumination of the stone jar in the end. The river of souls existed eternally, and the tides surged. What was it trying to guide them to? Chu Feng saw these walking corpses with their tightly closed eyes dripping with blood. A special mythical scene was reflected behind them like a scene from prehistory. Was that their past lives? After all, this was the sea of reincarnation. Even if it was dried up, there was still demonic power. Perhaps it could reflect something. However, Chu Feng didn't really believe this place. After all, someone had tampered with this place. Plop, plop. These walking corpses fell into the dried-up sea of reincarnation, one after another, brushing past Chu Feng. When they fell into the several square feet pond, their bodies rapidly shrunk. Moreover, they all turned to ashes in a split second. Their corporeal bodies decayed, and in a split second, it was as if they had experienced an epoch. However, their soul light hadn't been extinguished. They left the ashes, and like flames burning from rotten wood, they throbbed violently. Then, they submerged into that special energy path. They were on their way, and along that path, they hurried to the riverside of the soul. All the creatures were like moths flying into a flame. In the dried-up sea of reincarnation, their corporeal bodies turned to ashes, and their soul light leaped out, rushing towards the river of souls. This was simply a huge pit. Chu Feng was astonished, and at the same time, he felt his scalp go numb. Since ancient times, was this so-called sea of reincarnation a scam? This was sending people to their deaths. Or was it because someone had tampered with this place which led to this? Looking carefully, that net-like energy reincarnation path was very much like a web formed by some mountain spider. There was a hole in the web that led to the depths of the fog, and finally, the river of souls could be seen. Everyone jumped in and set off. As they advanced, that place trembled lightly. During this process, the stone jar only shone and didn't display its might. It didn't harm those soul lights. The fog dispersed, and Chu Feng saw a corner of the land and saw part of the truth. In the great fog there really was a river. It was faintly discernible and couldn't be seen clearly. And on the shore there were endless grains of sand. That expanse of soul light and a large number of gods were guided to the riverside of the soul by an unimaginable power. It was as if they had crossed millions of miles of spacetime in a single breath. After that, they disintegrated. This is... Chu Feng found it hard to understand. Golden runes flickered in his eyes, and those soul lights were disintegrating. In the end, they actually turned into a speck of dust on the riverside of the soul. A wisp of soul light, a speck of dust. After that, he looked at the river of souls that stretched as far as the eye could see. He was horrified. The cause of that place really couldn't be investigated in depth. He couldn't think about it in detail. It was truly terrifying. This was the meaning of them being summoned over. It was just to turn into dust? Chu Feng didn't understand what was going on. He didn't understand why this was happening at all. All the soul lights vanished, and that place was completely silent. But after a moment, the wind blew, and bloody lights swirled around. The terrifying wind was accompanied by weeping sounds. A lot of dust was blown up, and a few strange sceneries were revealed under the dust and sand. In a split second, Chu Feng's gaze was attracted. What did he see? That was definitely left behind by Celestial Emperor. He would write some more at night. Chapter 1358. The sound of weeping was very sinister, intermittent and continuous. The whirlwind carrying blood whistled, blowing up dust and sand in the air, but not a single grain of sand fell into the Soul River. It was unknown if it was stopped, or if it didn't have the qualifications to fall in. On the ground, after the sand and wind rose, a broken artifact appeared, carrying blood, a ghastly sight. There was a boundlessly terrifying pressure transmitted over. Chu Feng was sure that without the protection of the stone jar, they couldn't resist it at all. Even if he was a great divine king, he still couldn't endure that kind of pressure. At this time, the stone jar was sparkling and translucent, flowing with gentle light, making his entire body suffuse with this kind of aura, resisting all discomfort. He was sure that he had seen that kind of artifact before. The attribute of that energy was really too similar, and he had encountered it not long ago. The weapon of the large black dog's master, that man lying on the broken bell, had once released this kind of energy. The two were very similar, and the style was the same. This was a corner of the Celestial Emperor weapons fragment, a piece of that great bell that had been struck off, often left at the Soul River. This was enough to prove that the Celestial Emperors had indeed come, fought there, slaughtered their way to the Soul River, and paid a heavy price. It was because a piece of an Emperor weapon had once been broken in an intense and unimaginable supreme battle, and in the end, when they retreated, did they not even have time to take it away? Chu Feng was disappointed and frustrated, and then his heart went cold. Figures like that came together, yet they didn't clearly explore the Soul River, only later finding out that there was another world at the end of the Soul River, missing the chance to slaughter their way in. And if there was a day when he truly became strong, becoming the true Chu Feng, could he slaughter his way there? He felt that the so-called ultimate evolvers, when they reached the peak, were probably emperors, possibly on par with celestial emperors. It was so strenuous for them to work together. If I have the chance to rise up, if I explore it alone in the future, wouldn't that be courting death? Chu Feng felt that no matter how strong a person was, when their strength was exhausted, they would feel powerless. Just how strong did he have to be? There had once been several beings that stood at the top of the pyramid, appearing here, but they all didn't succeed, making him feel a terrifying chill when he thought deeply and carefully. He stared fixedly at the fragment of the great bell, on which there was blood, as well as words left behind. Were these words left behind by the Celestial Emperor? He was surprised again. When he retreated, this bell seemed to have been specially left behind. Could Celestial Emperor repair the Emperor weapon elsewhere? Was it left behind in such a solemn manner to warn future generations, or was it to pass on some special message and some kind of obsession? Chu Feng didn't recognize that line of bloody words, but through his constant gaze, he sensed a special kind of mighty power that transmitted strange fluctuations. Even if it wasn't a character that belonged to this era, the Grand Tao was extremely simple, and it actually emanated a certain type of common fluctuation that explained the meaning of that row of characters. This was the method and ability of an emperor. No beginning, no end, no reincarnation. A line of bloody words appeared clearly in front of him, and he was able to decipher its final meaning. What is this? Chu Feng was visibly shaken. Was there no reincarnation? An emperor denying it here was truly quite shocking. Very soon, Chu Feng talked about many things. He had met Number 9, and he had met the large black dog. He also mentioned them, and talked about the old matters of reincarnation. And now, an emperor himself had denied reincarnation. Chu Feng's back went cold. He had walked the path of reincarnation. Even though he wasn't truly reincarnating, he had sent his family and friends on their way. In the end, who were these reincarnated people? Even though he didn't believe in reincarnation in the true sense, and believed that it was only a transformation of matter, he couldn't help but believe that his loved ones were in the process of resurrection. Now, an emperor had denied all of this. Very soon, he thought of that person. He sat alone on the bronze coffin and left, leaving behind a lonely silhouette. He looked at the heavens dyed in blood, disappointed and lonely, never to appear again. Some people said that he had revived his old friends, that he had found and reconstructed reincarnation, but in the end, he didn't believe it and went on his way alone. That was why his silhouette was so lonely and sorrowful. Was all of this true? Chu Feng was bewildered. He couldn't determine what was true and what was false. At this moment, he really felt his hair stand on end. Not long ago, he had seen the black yak, the old donkey, and the Manchurian tiger. If there was no reincarnation, then who were they? That feeling was very clear. It was the same as the past. Chu Feng felt as if he had met someone from back then. Following which, Chu Feng thought of himself and said to himself, "Am I still myself?" Very soon, he nodded and said, "I didn't reincarnate. I used my physical body to sneak over. I'm still myself. Regardless of whether it's a transformation of matter or a true reincarnation, I've never experienced it. I only passed through a terrifying tunnel." Suddenly, Chu Feng's eyes became sharp. As the wind and sand rose, he saw that there were words on the other side of the bell buried by the spirit river. No beginning, no end, no reincarnation. But where did I come from? It was actually like this. Even the celestial emperor was bewildered? That emperor actually had doubts as well. Was he questioning his own origins? He was doubting his roots and was interrogating his own past. That celestial emperor was suspected to have reincarnated. Dust and sand rose, and the spirit river flowed quietly. Why was this place so strange? How many secrets were hidden? The fog was thick and everything was covered up. If there was no reincarnation in this world, then who were those old friends he saw? Was there some kind of existence interfering, replicating, and recreating similar bodies? Chu Feng's imagination ran wild, and he was shaken. However, the black yak, the Manchurian tiger, the old donkey, and the others were too real. Moreover, those people all hid sincere feelings from the past in their hearts, and there was no difference. Could it be that what they said was true? Chu Feng thought back to number 9 and the black yak's hints and revelations. As for whether there was reincarnation, even the celestial emperors themselves had their own differences and hadn't made a final decision. Some celestial emperors believed that reincarnation existed. From the human race to the ants, then to the universe, and even a speck of dust, everything was in reincarnation. In fact, even time, even the world, even the things that had happened, all of these were also in reincarnation. From ancient times until now, similarities could be found in all the phenomena in the sky. They had all existed, and they had all happened. And there were also celestial emperors who denied that it was only the transformation of matter. Nature was copying some old memories, and it was equivalent to a machine repeatedly producing the same type of product, filling it with the same information. And in essence, it was already not that person, not that universe, not that speck of dust, not those past times, and not those things that had happened. The celestial emperors had their own differences in the end, which also meant that if they believed it, it existed, and if they didn't, it didn't. Chu Feng felt a headache coming on. He was very conflicted in his heart. Sometimes he wanted to say that it was only the transformation of matter, but sometimes he believed that his relatives and friends had really been revived. He looked into the distance with all his might. At this time, it was unknown whether it was because the spirit river had sensed the stone jar, but there was a violent storm, lightning flashing and thunder roaring. In an instant, A lot of the fog that covered the sky was shaken away. Under the dusky sky, when dazzling lightning streaked across, the end of the Spirit River was instantly illuminated. After that, Chu Feng actually saw a tablet standing quietly. When he focused his gaze, he saw that there was also a row of words on it. That kind of words were written in iron and silver, bold and powerful, and there was actually the indistinct cry of a sword coming from it. In an instant, even the stone jar shone, and the sound of chanting came out. It blocked that kind of formless profound meaning of the runes, causing Chu Feng's heart to be alarmed. In an instant, he knew who left it behind. The words on the stone tablet actually leaped out with sword intent, and the aura of that sword light slashed out from the first mountain in the Yang realm was too similar. Chu Feng believed that, if it wasn't for the stone jar, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it when he stared at that tablet. How many people in this world could withstand that kind of fluctuation? He also left a message. I want to know what exactly he will say. Chu Feng calmed his heart and concentrated. He looked carefully and tried to figure out the meaning of that kind of ancient words. If there wasn't the protection of the stone jar, who could stand here? There was absolutely no way to comprehend the inscriptions on the tablet. That person had once cut through the ages with a single sword, so the message he left behind was definitely no small matter. Please remember this book's domain name. Third Sect Master's Mobile Version. Chapter 1359. The monument was dilapidated, weathered by the passage of time. With a glance, one could tell that it had stood there for an endless amount of time. There were traces of thunder and lightning on its surface, as well as cracks from the heavy strikes of weapons. There were also patterns accumulated over the years. The most important thing was that there were wisps of Tao Law fragments, explaining its ancient history. It had witnessed the development of heaven and earth, the destruction and rebirth of the great realms. Chu Feng didn't care about these things and instead studied the words on it. Gradually, he found the feeling that the great Tao was simple. Creatures at that level could casually write things that could be passed down through the ages. Just their words alone were already the Tao. They could blossom in different great eras and different civilizations, deciphering the true meaning. This was simply a supreme scripture. Through each stroke, the powerful engraving revealed an unfathomable Tao to the later generations. It was as if a great pressure had descended. There is no reincarnation. When Chu Feng read up to this point, his heart immediately sank. Even that person said this. Was this the final truth? He looked backwards. There were true words and deep symbols. It was unknown which great era they were left behind, but they had existed for a long time without being destroyed. Chu Feng carefully studied and deciphered them. In this world, there was no reincarnation. That person had pursued it. In the end, he sensed something and saw the tattered reincarnation path. Even though he used it, he discovered that it wasn't a natural cycle. It was created by an ancient creature, but it had been abandoned. It was unknown just how many years had passed, but he dug it out. When he saw this, a chill ran down Chu Feng's back. This reincarnation was created by a creature and not naturally formed. It wasn't the natural laws of heaven and earth? In that instant, he somewhat understood why that person was disappointed and frustrated in the end. Perhaps he discovered something was wrong later on. Was there a flaw in this so-called reincarnation? Was the resurrected person just a copy with the same memories? There were actually still words, but unfortunately, the monument was damaged a bit. The words below were incomplete, and it was difficult for Chu Feng to recognize them. Even though he was a great divine king, he still couldn't decipher that person's incomplete Tao profound meaning. It was impossible for him to understand the supreme words of that great era. It was too unfortunate. He really wanted to know what that person left behind in the end. What kind of explanation would there be, and where did he end up sitting alone in the bronze coffin? However, Chu Feng persevered and comprehended in every way. Finally, he identified a few words on the incomplete part, natural reincarnation. Mentioning this title, Did he discover something, or was it another doubt? Chu Feng's heart trembled as he pondered endlessly. What chilled him the most was that this man-made reincarnation was created by what kind of creature? One had to bear in mind that it had continued all the way to this day. Ever since it was excavated, it seemed to be operating in a small area again, carrying some special missions. Chu Feng thought about it and felt that this matter was somewhat terrifying. That supreme expert who had cut through the ages with a single sword strike was unparalleled. He had traversed through the ages and it was difficult for him to be defeated. Although from the words, Chu Feng could feel that the person who left in the bronze coffin was fearless. He always felt that if that person had an enemy, it would most likely be the origin of the reincarnation path, the creator. Although he could feel from the words that the person who left in the bronze coffin was fearless, Chu Feng always felt that if that person had an enemy, it would most likely be from the origin of the reincarnation path, that creator. They must have discovered something? Chu Feng muttered to himself. Number 9 and the large black dog hinted at the corresponding words. Because they had discovered something, they came to the end of the Soul River. However, that person who had destroyed the past and the present seemed to have encountered something unexpected. He left in a hurry, and didn't carefully investigate the Soul River. And the few celestial emperors of later generations were negligent and careless. They had clearly killed their way here and felt the abnormality, but they didn't discover the final stage. In the end, they also left. Boom! The sea of lightning exploded, the Soul River rumbled, the great fog collapsed, and sand and stones flew everywhere. This place was filled with the dust transformed from souls. After the river and the sand and stones rolled up, they were extremely special. At this moment, Chu Feng seemed to hear the cries of countless living beings in all the realms. It was as if he saw the heavens and the earth, the past, the present, and the future, were all dyed red with blood. The broken stone tablet trembled, and was bombarded by lightning. The sand and stones below were reduced, and another part of the tablet was exposed. There was actually a final line of words there, and it was relatively clear. Chu Feng could clearly see it. One day I will return and reappear in the world. It was actually such a sentence. Where did he go? What kind of decision was this? Number 9 said that that person was unrivaled in the world, and his brilliance covered the past and the present. No matter where he went, he was the most brilliant and invincible, but in the end, he could not be seen in the heavens or the earth, and had completely disappeared. And here were his words, and he seemed to know some of the words. From then on, there would be no trace of him in the world, and there would be nothing left of him in the vast world. Chu Feng's heart thumped violently. That person couldn't have died, right? Why would that person say such a thing? If he thought about it carefully, he couldn't help but feel an ominous feeling. It was as if he had no choice but to make some kind of choice. However, there seemed to be hope left behind, as if he was waiting for a new life. One day, he would revive and he would return. Of course, this was only the worst possibility. There was another possibility, and that was that person was going to a special place. The road was too far, too difficult to reach, and it would take too much time. Or it could be said that the road was too dangerous, and he didn't know when he would reach the end. He thought about how the entire stone tablet mentioned reincarnation, and the middle part mentioned natural reincarnation. Could it be that he discovered something, and wanted to personally investigate it, and even try it? Chu Feng looked at the engraved characters again, and finally, he recognized another terrifying character. Enemy. Chu Feng's pupils contracted. He vaguely guessed and made some associations. Did that person discover the enemy's tracks, and so he chased after the enemy, or perhaps he went to challenge the ultimate enemy? He shook his head, feeling a headache. Right now, he was far from that level, and there was no way he could comprehend more from that damaged character. Moreover, it was useless for someone at his level to think too much. When he snapped back to reality, he discovered that there was water on his hand. He was stunned and it seeped out from the stone jar. "This is the Sea of Reincarnation?" He was quite surprised. After the Sea of Reincarnation was absorbed by the stone jar, it formed a puddle of veined patterns. Now it was slightly dim, and it had returned to its original state. It became a picture mark, and now it was being refined into a special water pool. Chu Feng was sure that this was different from the Sea of Reincarnation, and it seemed to be some kind of special water. Opening up true water? Chu Feng suddenly suspected that this was very much like the legendary true water from before the creation of the world. There was only a small amount in that era, and it couldn't be found in later generations. He didn't expect that the so-called Sea of Reincarnation would have such a substance, and now some of it had been refined. Chu Feng clenched his teeth and tried to absorb it, and then smelt it. He wanted to cultivate the wonderful 7 treasures technique. If this opened up true water, it would definitely be the strongest rare treasure of the water attribute, and it would be of great use to him. In the past, when had the people who cultivated the wonderful 7 treasures technique collected such luxurious treasures? Moreover, each of the rare treasures Chu Feng had collected before was rare since ancient times. They were all unique and difficult to find. He felt that the wonderful 7 treasures technique he cultivated in this way should be able to resist the martial madman's invincible art of time, which was ranked in the top 3. Suddenly Chu Feng was shocked. The stone jar rumbled, and the clear sound of chanting came out. It wasn't the vague sound when it was resisting the pressure at the spirit river. Now it was another kind of great Tao sound. Moreover, he actually understood it. This was a scripture? His heart shook violently, and then he was incomparably happy and excited. He listened carefully, and he wanted to remember everything. He felt that this matter was too important. What kind of sound was the great Tao sound like? It really exists, and I've sent it out in my WeChat public account. If my book friends want to hear it, go search for Chun Dong on my WeChat public account, add me, and send me the message, Great Tao Sound, and you'll be able to receive the Supreme Divine Sound I've sent you. Chapter 1360. A mysterious and profound scripture actually rang out from the stone jar. This caused Chu Feng to be extremely shaken. It wasn't an indistinct fluctuation, nor was it a faintly discernible sound, but a genuine scripture. It entered Chu Feng's ears and entered his heart. He could clearly sense it. Now, he was sure that this was a breathing technique. This was only the beginning, but it had already intoxicated him. He began to circulate the technique involuntarily and began to breathe rhythmically along with its pulsations. At this moment, he felt that it was too wonderful. His whole body felt comfortable, as if he had ascended into the heavens. His body was surrounded by boundless mist and then sparkling with vitality. In the past, he had grasped many other types of advanced breathing techniques, but none of them were as smooth as this one. It was as if it had been specially prepared for him. At this moment, Chu Feng's body was sometimes shrouded in hazy radiance, and sometimes shrouded in white mist. This was the first time he had circulated the technique, but it was so compatible that the two were resonating. But at this moment, Chu Feng also felt that this breathing technique was somewhat familiar. There was a familiar smell to it. Could it be? He was quite astonished after a momentary lapse in thought. However, he didn't dare to be distracted for fear of missing out on small details. He had to remember every symbol and all the pulsations without the slightest mistake. For a moment, even Chu Feng's hair was translucent as if it was cast from immortal gold. It had a special texture and was blossoming with divine radiance. It was as if he had put on a layer of battle armor, as if he had walked out from the prehistoric era. His whole body was shining brilliantly with symbols flickering on various parts of his body from time to time. Especially when he breathed, even his mouth and nose had golden symbols and silver ripples, and in his eyes, there were even crosses that flashed and disappeared. This kind of feeling was too special. Every inch of his skin was breathing. It wasn't isolated, but rather linked together as a whole. Chu Feng even felt that his hair was breathing. This was something that had never happened before. He carefully sensed that this wasn't an illusion. His whole body was breathing everywhere. His 5 viscera were sparkling and translucent, emitting thunderous sounds as they resonated continuously. This was somewhat similar to the thunderous breathing technique. Lightning would pass through his body and refine his viscera. Chu Feng didn't think it was an illusion. Even his blood was breathing, and even his bones were breathing. Mysterious energy was flowing all over his body. At this moment, his heart was as red as the heavenly sun. It released blazing energy, truly becoming a sun within his body, providing him with an endless stream of vitality. Apart from this, his kidneys shone, producing a mist that undulated like a vast ocean. It could be said that his kidneys were full of energy. This was a type of strange energy that couldn't be lacked. Chu Feng's entire body was experiencing a new experience. His essence qi was surging and mighty. His entire flesh shell seemed to be swelling up, and his hair was as bright as the golden sun. As for his soul light, it was naturally breathing too. It was even more thorough than his corporeal body. His soul light surged like the most dazzling divine flame that had suddenly burned in the pitch-black universe. It broke the silence and illuminated the darkness. His soul light and corporeal body resonated. The two became one and blended together. His breathing technique became even smoother. His spirit and corporeal body became one, and there was no distinction between them. His strength was increasing. Chu Feng sensed that his own physique was actually transforming. This made him deeply surprised. His Yang realm's Tao fruit was that of a great sage, and the lesser Yin realm's Tao fruit was that of a great divine king. They had both reached the pinnacle of their respective realms, so how could they still improve? He hadn't broken through and hadn't advanced to a higher realm. It was indeed somewhat abnormal that he could still improve like this. Very soon, he sensed that this kind of improvement wasn't limitless. Moreover, it was mainly targeted at some parts and some special abilities. Otherwise, it would be somewhat outrageous if he improved as a whole. It would break the basic laws of evolution in the world. Regardless of whether it was a great sage or a great divine king, theoretically speaking, they were already considered to be at the pinnacle of the realm of saints and divine kings. It wouldn't be too realistic if they were stronger. Of course, if he had to find the pinnacle of this pinnacle realm, there might be that kind of possibility. However, this would require tempering and all kinds of attempts. And now, Chu Feng seemed to have found this path. This kind of feeling he had now was too wonderful. For example, his fiery eyes ability had improved a step further. When he looked at the scenery in the distance, not only was it clearer, but he could even slow down the trajectory of some moving creatures that streaked past. It's not that they've become slower, but rather that my perception has mutated and has strangely improved. This was absolutely astonishing. It could even be said to be abnormal. All the fleeting opportunities that were moving at high speeds and were very difficult to capture in the past might be captured because of this. Besides, Chu Feng felt that his own strength had become stronger. For example, after circulating this special breathing technique, he could punch out with a fist seal. It was as though a great sun was streaking across the sky when he punched out. It was simply unparalleled in this realm. In the void, it was as though there really was a great sun streaking across at high speed, leaving behind a remnant mark of the Tao. Chu Feng was astonished. He saw that the void was distorted by the pressure of the Tao mark. Just now, he had only punched out unintentionally. He had not deliberately used the incomplete Vairocana fist, yet it was already so powerful. This was one of the 3 most powerful fist scriptures of the Buddhist race. Under normal circumstances, unless the Buddhist race's strongest breathing technique was used, it would be impossible to produce such power. Just now, Chu Feng had actually directly comprehended the essence of the incomplete Vairocana fist. He had a sense of invincibility, and it was a confidence that stemmed from his strength. Chu Feng tried other simple techniques, and they were all the same. It was as though they had been enhanced, and their power had increased by a level. During this process, he did not let his guard down and did not get carried away. Instead, he continued to remember this rhythm and comprehend this special breathing technique. In the end, he could already confirm that it was just as he had guessed at the beginning. It's you. It's actually you. Is it going to be completed at this moment? Chu Feng was incomparably delighted. He was unusually excited in his heart. From the beginning, he had felt a sense of familiarity. It was deeply ingrained in his bones because he had always been cultivating this breathing technique, Tao induction. There was also another name for it. That name was even more vivid, and it was called robbery induction. However, the scripture resonating from this stone jar was much more than what he had cultivated before. Moreover, the breathing technique from before had now been expanded. A short passage of scripture would be added to every breath, and it had become unrecognizable. But that special quality rooted in his bones allowed Chu Feng to detect it immediately. He guessed that it was robbery induction. As expected, as he progressed, he became increasingly convinced that this was a complete piece that had patched up the previous incomplete technique. In the past, Yao Yao had always emphasized that this technique was extremely strange and that it had yet to be perfected. Everyone was working hard to decipher it, but there was no result. Now it seemed that the source was actually within the stone jar. Chu Feng discovered that this breathing technique had been supplemented quite a bit. Moreover, this kind of supplement was added to every small passage. It was evenly mixed in to make it complete. Of course, the last part was completely new because Yao Yao's grandfather hadn't obtained the follow-up back then. The robbery induction breathing technique had once appeared in the Great Abyss, and there were traces of it in Mount Kunlun. This was definitely because the stone jar had left traces there, and for some reason, some scripture had also been left behind. If I finish comprehending it, I'll have obtained the true robbery induction? Chu Feng's emotions fluctuated violently. In reality, the robbery induction was indeed extraordinary and far exceeded the imagination of ordinary evolvers. What realm was Yao Yao at that time? The suppression of the lesser netherworld restricted all living beings from breaking through, forming a terrifying ceiling. But even so, she still killed one of the Tao bodies of the great martial heavenly lord. Apart from her heaven-bestowed talents, it should be difficult for her to be known as the number one under the starry skies, but she succeeded in defying the heavens. And this had a lot to do with the robbery induction because at the last moment, she comprehended the complete piece. At that time, Yao Yao suddenly comprehended the robbery induction during the battle. Why? At that time, Chu Feng was in the Great Abyss with the stone jar. At that time, Yao Yao was too stunning. Her extreme sublimation made the stone jar resonate. Unfortunately, back then, Chu Feng's level was too low. Moreover, his body and soul light had been shattered by the great martial heavenly lord, so he couldn't resonate. Actually, even Yao Yao didn't know that the resonance came from the stone jar. The battle was too intense, so she didn't think too much about it. She naturally circulated the breathing technique and completed it in one go. Now, Chu Feng was looking at the stone jar. Naturally, he knew the source of the resonance. At this moment, a sixth of the stone jar's surface was glowing. It was sparkling and translucent, and the sound of scripture was being chanted. One could vaguely see the densely packed tadpole-like characters on the surface. It was also like dragons and snakes swimming about. It was extremely odd. Chu Feng drew in a breath of cold air. The stone jar was too mysterious. A small sixth of the area had once revealed special mountains and rivers. They were all dangerous lands related to domains. Now, the other sixth of the area was actually the robbery induction breathing technique. What exactly was its origin? Was the stone jar its original appearance? It had already undergone a transformation once. Previously, it was squarish and had been picked up by Chu Feng from the crevice at the foot of Mount Kunlun. Apart from the 3 seeds hidden inside, it was really unremarkable. There was nothing special about it. Chu Feng didn't dare to think too much. He calmed his heart and concentrated his mind. He began to concentrate on memorizing this complete breathing technique. Finally, the breathing technique resonance ended. He clearly remembered every detail and branded it in the deepest parts of his body and soul light. It was completely perfect. Next, he began to circulate it continuously. After a few times, Chu Feng discovered to his surprise that he didn't even deliberately smelt the true water of creation. He had completely absorbed it and turned it into his own. At this point, the wonderful 7 treasures technique was further improved by him. He had already fused 4 kinds of rare and precious substances, strengthening this ancient technique to an outrageous degree. I really want to find a celestial venerable to do it, Chu Feng said to himself. That was because his confidence had skyrocketed after he grasped the complete robbery induction. He felt that his entire body was full of essence qi and energy. Even his soul light energy was boiling. He calmed himself down and didn't want to be deceived by this feeling. That was because no divine king could kill a celestial venerable in a normal battle. It had been like this since ancient times, and no one had ever broken it. Very soon, Chu Feng slapped his mouth. He really saw a celestial venerable, and more than one person had come in. Really a jinx. Whatever I say comes true. Then hurry up and send in a few celestial fairies. Chu Feng was indignant. Chapter 1361. Chu Feng looked askance at himself. What kind of people were these? He had just mentioned it and 2 celestial venerables had appeared. Moreover, they seemed especially powerful and ruthless. Even though their auras were restrained and reflected in the saint realm, Chu Feng's fiery eyes were still able to see through the actual situation despite the fear of bursting this space. Oh, it's a bit strange. The aura here makes people restless and uncomfortable. An old man spoke. He was wearing a gray Taoist robe. Although he seemed thin, his voice was loud and clear like a golden bell. He was full of energy. This was a powerful character. Although he was dressed in Taoist attire, he wasn't from the Taoist race. He was from the Yuan family who had been targeting Yu Shang's ancestors' peerless emperor weapon. It seems a bit strange. You go to the other side and I'll go around from here. Don't miss anything, said another celestial venerable. He was wearing a dark red battle robe and had jet black hair. He was of medium build and was a powerful celestial venerable at the peak of his realm. His eyes shone like lightning when he opened and closed them. Chu Feng was astonished. They hadn't discovered him in advance? In an instant, he understood. Because they were so far apart, his eyes of fire and gold had evolved once again. They were now so sharp that it was shocking to hear. Additionally, the 2 celestial venerables had suppressed their realms in order to enter the saint realm. All of their abilities had declined. Both of them were from the Yuan family. One had come and the other had gone far away. Chu Feng didn't have a good impression of them. They had caused the death of the Yao Yao race and planted gold in Yao Yao's grandfather's body to conduct all kinds of cruel experiments. It was outrageous. Although he had already killed Yuan Ling, he still couldn't vent the anger in his heart. The main culprit of this race, the one who could command the world, had yet to come out of seclusion. I'll collect another wave of interest. Chu Feng was ready for battle. He stared at the celestial venerable in the prime of his life. His hair was black and sparkling. This celestial venerable looked like a middle-aged man. His blood energy was exuberant and hidden in the depths of his body. Once it erupted, it would be quite terrifying. In truth, Chu Feng wasn't sure. He had never heard of a divine king being able to kill a celestial venerable. Would he be able to succeed by taking such a risk? He believed that, if they fought and the other party lost, they would definitely erupt with the might of an Empyrean. At that time, they would be in big trouble. First of all, he would be in danger. He might be killed by an Empyrean. Secondly, this small world was about to collapse. At that time, he would not be worried. With the protection of the stone jar, he would be fine. However, if even an Empyrean could survive, the stone jar would most likely be exposed. In that case, we can only kill him. We can't let him leave alive. Chu Feng's eyes were like two torches, emitting blazing beams of light. Chu Feng left the dried-up sea of reincarnation and no longer paid attention to the strange path that was still opening. This place was still connected to the Spirit River, and it was extremely sinister. He walked out and prepared to fight. Before long, the Yuan family's Empyrean approached. He discovered Chu Feng from a distance and asked in a deep voice, "It's a bit unexpected that you're here. Where did Yuan Ling go?" His dark red armor shone with a cold metallic luster, as if it had gone through countless battles and bathed in the blood of many Empyreans. Yuan Ling? That Empyrean whose cultivation was crippled and was as weak as a chicken? I killed him, Chu Feng calmly informed. He felt that there was no need to be polite to this race, yet they were so ruthless toward the Yushang family. An evil aura seeped out from their bones, and they could not treat evil people with kindness. This caused the crimson-robed Empyrean, Yuan Feng, to look at Chu Feng with an unfriendly gaze. It was as if two knives were stabbing at him. He shouted, "Who gave you the courage to disrespect an Empyrean? You actually dare to speak such nonsense in front of me? Even if your ancestor were to come back to life, he would have to lower his head and kowtow to me while trembling in fear. A puny saint like you dares to be so impudent? Hurry up and accept your punishment. Hand over the Yushang family's imprint." Imperceptibly, he released a special domain that intimidated people's minds and made them want to submit. A screen of light appeared around Chu Feng's body. If it weren't for his special Dao fruit and the robbery induction breathing technique that had been cultivated to perfection, he might have suffered a loss from this sudden attack. This was a wondrous technique of the Yuan Ling family. As soon as he finished speaking, it covered the entire area. It could be considered an extremely ancient and strange curse. It was extremely powerful. Normally, most people wouldn't take verbal insults seriously. However, under these circumstances, the Yuan family had already revealed their trump card. Boom! An even more resplendent screen of light rose from Chu Feng's body. The human king domain opened up to isolate the attack of the curse. The blood-colored runes were blocked outside and then obliterated. This grandpa is a great sage. Chu Feng had his hands behind his back, looking disdainfully at Empyrean Yuan Feng with an arrogant expression. Yuan Feng's eyes were dark. He wanted to stab this young saint to death with a finger. How could he not know that Chowda was a great sage? He naturally knew that Chowda was related to the first mountain. But in order to obtain that supreme treasure shrouded in source energy, there was nothing that the Yuan family wouldn't dare to do or offend. After all, even the Yushang family had been destroyed by them. I am an Empyrean, and I have reconstructed my physical body. Even if you are a great sage, you still have to lie down and coil up. If you don't want to die, then crawl over and offer up the imprint of that family, Yuan Feng said coldly. Although he was strong, he was also feeling increasingly uneasy. Could it be that Yuan Ling had really died at the hands of this young man? Not likely. He felt that even if Yuan Feng was no match for a saint, he could still erupt with the power of a divine king and crush this young man. But where was Yuan Ling? Why had he disappeared? Moreover, there was no sign of a divine king eruption. There was no trace of him at all. I don't care if you are an Empyrean or not. Since you want to attack me, I will slaughter you. Chu Feng's body was shining brilliantly. He had already started to circulate his breathing technique. The complete robbery induction breathing technique doubled his confidence. He felt that he was really too powerful. From his blood to his organs to his soul light, his energy was abundant to the extreme. In a trance, He felt that he could capture a dragon with a raise of his hand and pinch a phoenix to death with a flip of his hand. This kind of illusion and conceit made him feel that he had to restrain himself. He couldn't be so complacent. But the robbery induction breathing technique was really powerful. It gave people confidence. "How dare you? Don't be so savage," Yuan Feng shouted. At first, he had misgivings about his status, but when he thought about how there was no one here, his gaze turned cold. "Who do you think you are? Even if your ancestors achieved the divine king realm, or even the empyrean realm, in front of us, they are nothing more than slaves." "I will kill you," Chu Feng said coldly. Yuan Feng waved his hand and said, "Troubled times are coming. A junior with a good constitution like you will also have some kind of opportunity. Some great outer realm clans are willing to accept a so-called great sage like you as a slave. Today I will give you one last chance. Enter my Yuan family and I will give you a position as an imperial guard. I will give you gifts and maybe I will let you marry into my family in the future. Otherwise, when troubled times come, there will be no way out for those without foundation and background, especially those who are related to the Yushang family. I don't know how many powerful existences will return. They are bound to settle accounts with the so-called Celestial Emperor's descendants." Settle accounts with the Celestial Emperor's descendants. Chu Feng's gaze was faint. This news was indeed somewhat astonishing. "Yes." Yuan Feng nodded. "Come here. Grandpa Chu will teach you. The Yuan family is nothing more than this. Back then, you were defeated in the struggle against the Celestial Emperor. Now your family is in even greater trouble because you have provoked Chu Feng. Your family will be in an even more tragic state." Chu Feng shouted. "Impudent! It's just the life of a slave. You will never be able to reach the end of the evolutionary path in this lifetime." Yuan Feng had already made his move while berating him. A small silver bell flew out with a strange sound that could tear apart one's soul light. This was the famous soul-breaking bell. No matter how many cultivators there were on the battlefield, their soul light would shatter as soon as the bell rang out. This was a great killing weapon. Ordinary people couldn't refine it because it had to be mixed with some mother gold. This kind of weapon had the potential to become a rare treasure. However, Chu Feng had become a great sage. Naturally, his methods were extraordinary. Moreover, he was currently circulating the peerless breathing technique. Golden light appeared on the surface of his body and then blossomed. It was as if he was standing in the middle of a blazing sun with a ball of light formed from special symbols. Even the bell waves were blocked. It was as if he was impenetrable. Chu Feng stood in the ball of light. He was divine and resplendent. Moreover, he revealed a strange expression at this moment. His fiery eyes were brilliant. From his point of view, Yuan Feng's movements were too slow. It was as if he was an old ox pulling a cart. My consciousness, my thoughts, and my perception have all surpassed the past by a large margin. This is caused by the evolution of the golden eyes. I just don't know if the speed of my attacks can keep up with my feelings. Chu Feng's heart was burning with passion. He had already made his move when he thought of this. His body was like a shooting star as he traversed across the sky. He stretched out his limbs vigorously and vigorously as he attacked forward. His speed was too fast. He was like a human-shaped bolt of lightning. He streaked across the void from ancient times and illuminated the firmament of the past and present until he arrived in this world. However, Chu Feng felt that the burden on his body was too great at this moment. It was as if his body was about to break apart. This shocked him. He had just made his move and it was already like this. How could it be like this? Very soon, he understood. Because his body's speed was too fast, it had surpassed common sense. It could be said that the great sage represented the absolute peak of this realm, and he was now trying to find the extreme point of this realm. His speed had caught up with his perception and his consciousness. It had been raised to an unbelievable level. Even a great sage would find it difficult to achieve this in theory. Therefore, his attack had overloaded his body. However, this kind of power was also extremely terrifying. When he punched out, with this kind of speed and the great increase in power, it was enough to shock this domain. Bang! Yuan Feng did not evade and was hit by the first punch. His face was punched, and blood splattered everywhere. His face was distorted, and blood flew out of his mouth. Boom! Chu Feng's fist shone as if it was cast from gold. It was like he was brandishing a great sun as he smashed out. This was the second punch. It was ruthless, accurate, and incomparably fierce. It was like the light of the heavenly Tao had fallen and could kill all living things. Yuan Feng's pupils constricted. I am just that invincible. Chu Feng looked at him disdainfully. He then went on to write the next chapter. Please remember this book's original domain name. Third Sect Leader. Chapter 1362. Yuan Feng was shocked and angry. He was a celestial venerable, so why couldn't he evade? Even if he was suppressed to the saint realm now, he should be able to deal with it with his experience and vision. In theory, people like them shouldn't be afraid of great saints after turning back. But now, his speed and reaction were too slow. He couldn't escape the domain of this punch at all, and all his escape routes were sealed. The fist light of that punch was too dazzling. Moreover, it was strangely powerful, and it closed in on him. He tried his best to evade, but he was still hit. His left ear buzzed as he was struck by that golden fist. Instantly, heavenly blood splattered everywhere. He almost fell to the ground, and his eardrums might have been broken. He was struck until he was ringing and even deafened. This really made him feel incomparably absurd. After a celestial venerable turned back and suppressed to the saint realm, he was actually crushed by a junior? That's right, he felt that he had really been crushed. How could he suffer such a big loss in a single exchange? Boom! Yuan Feng raised his essence, qi, and spirit. His blood and qi surged, and the energy dormant in his body surged out, almost breaking through the limits of the saint realm. He couldn't bear it anymore. A protective light screen formed outside his body. It was formed from pure golden runes, protecting his body from being attacked and injuring it. However, Chu Feng's supreme attack was shocking. It was like a wisp of primordial light, changing unpredictably from east to west. Moreover, its power was terrifying like thunder. Boom! Yuan Feng groaned. The protective light screen outside his body disintegrated, broken by Chu Feng's special method. Wonderful seven treasures technique? Yuan Feng's pupils shrank. It wasn't that he hadn't seen this kind of technique before, but he had never seen someone who could cultivate this technique to this level. This technique was very difficult to cultivate. It was necessary to collect rare materials. The higher the grade, the more powerful the technique would be after it was smelted. What did you collect? In the process of his counterattack, he really couldn't help but ask. The corners of Chu Feng's mouth curled into a sneer. He was still making his move. Out of the 7 wonderful techniques, he had collected a total of 4 supreme substances. If he wanted to compete with the time technique in the future, he naturally had to reach the strongest level. Right now, he had incomparably strong confidence. The wondrous technique tore apart the light screen and swept across Yuan Feng's body, causing him to immediately bleed profusely. Even his chest caved in and was almost pierced through. Thus, the front and back of his body were exposed. Ah! Yuan Feng roared. He felt humiliated. He had been famous for so many years, yet his chest was torn open by a junior, suffering such injuries. This was just too inconceivable. He felt more and more sullen. Within his body, the most powerful blood shone. He really couldn't hold back any longer and was about to use the power of an Empyrean. However, when a few strands of aura circulated, this small world trembled, releasing terrifying cracking sounds. It was going to break apart, this secret realm about to collapse. In that instant, Yuan Feng felt as if cold water had been poured over his head. He immediately suppressed that energy, making his body grow dim. He didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. He feared that if he did this, the small world would collapse. If that happened, Chowda's body and spirit would be destroyed. At that time, where would he go to find the Yushang bloodline's imprint? For the sake of obtaining the imprint and thus finding the unmatched artifact wrapped in all life source energy, their clan had endured for so many years, never taking action. Now, there was no way he would completely extinguish this final hope. However, he also felt great hatred. This imprint had to be willingly transferred by the host, or else it would be extremely dangerous. It would be rejected and he wouldn't be able to obtain anything. With a moment of distraction, Chu Feng's fist imprint arrived, smashing into his face, making his mouth full of blood. The bridge of his nose seemed to have been broken, his eyes unable to even open. This fist's power was too great, striking him until everything before his eyes went dark, almost fainting on the spot. The Empyrean's skin really is thick. Chu Feng sighed. Regardless, even if the other party suppressed his own cultivation, the energy contained in his flesh hiding in the depths of his body, not being exposed, when he suffered an attack, there was still a type of self-protection instinct, a secret force neutralizing the damage. Otherwise, if another saint tried, they would have long been blown up by Chu Feng. Dong! Yuan Feng activated the soul-breaking bell, his body also shining, covered densely with countless resplendent symbols. He fought with Chu Feng, wanting to capture him. However, when the wonderful Seven Treasures technique swept over, that silver bell directly flew out, and clear traces appeared on its surface, showing signs of damage. Moreover, when this wonderful technique swept over Yuan Feng's body, it made his skin and flesh lacerate. From his abdomen to his chest, and then to his shoulder, a large chunk of flesh was missing, his bones almost torn off. How is this possible? It's true that he's a great saint, but he can actually injure me like this. Moreover, his speed is too fast. Yuan Feng said to himself, shocked and angry. At this point, he felt a bit of a chill inside. If they were in the same realm, he would have been suppressed and not his opponent. You should rejoice that there is Empyrean-level energy hibernating within your body, or else you would have long been a dead man. Your flesh would have long been pierced through by me, exploding several times. Chu Feng said. This old man will release Empyrean energy to destroy you. Yuan Feng shouted, his eyes suffused with ominous light. Chu Feng secretly prepared the stone jar to prevent him from truly destroying this small world and causing both sides to suffer. However, he believed that the other party wouldn't do this lightly. It was because the other party came for him, wanting that imprint, still thinking about the mysterious ancient supreme weapon. In addition, if the small world really was destroyed, the Empyrean might not necessarily be able to survive. One shouldn't look at how fragile the secret realm was now. Its level was terrifyingly high back then, and the energy it contained was also universally shocking. Once the Empyrean destroyed this place, they would most likely die as well. Chu Feng didn't say a word, continuously attacking with extreme speed. He was like a streak of floating light, dancing in the world of mortals, his posture graceful, but the destructive power was extremely terrifying. Bang! This time, after Chu Feng's wonderful Seven Treasures technique swept out, Empyrean Yuan Feng flew into a rage out of humiliation. It was because a large chunk of his scalp had been sliced off, his hair missing. It was so deep that bone could be seen, dripping with blood. It was to the extent that even the crown of his head was almost split open. This was a fatal attack. Even he himself admitted that, if it weren't for the Empyrean's energy hibernating within his body, he would have already been destroyed in body and soul. Kill. He opened his mouth and spat out a waterfall with the diagram of the sun, moon, and stars within it. It pressed towards Chu Feng, but in the blink of an eye, Chu Feng crossed the air and easily dodged it. You're too slow. Are you an old cow spitting saliva? I'm standing right here and you can't even hit me, Chu Feng teased. Then, he suddenly rushed over and launched another attack. Yuan Feng attacked, but unfortunately, his movements fell into Chu Feng's special fiery eyes. It was too slow. His movements seemed to be broken down, extended, and stretched. Originally, he was as fast as lightning, but now, he was pausing and slowly unfolding. This was the terrifying aspect of the fiery eyes after they mutated. Sometimes, they were also called the golden battle eyes. They were specially prepared for battle, and with these golden eyes, it was difficult not to defeat the opponent. Unless a few other special eyes appeared, it wouldn't be able to compare to it. Boom! Chu Feng charged over again. This time, white mist filled his mouth and flashed with special symbols. This was the complete robbery induction breathing technique. At the same time, he used the ultimate fist. The fist seal was like the sky, majestic, and its power rose sharply. Apart from the golden light around Chu Feng's body, there was also a faint layer of bloody light. This was the characteristic of the ultimate fist. Apart from Li Su, almost no one could master it. Yuan Feng was shocked. Even as an Empyrean, he could feel the abnormality. Chu Feng himself was also surprised. He felt that the power of this fist was far greater than before. In an instant, he understood. Back then, old Gu had told him that in order to master the ultimate fist, he had to supplement it with the ultimate breathing technique in order to continue the broken path of this fist. In addition, he could irrigate it with the blood of 10,000 spirits to refine the fist intent. This would greatly increase the strength of the practitioner of the Fist Sutra. Thus, it was best to temper it on the battlefield. Now that Chu Feng had obtained the complete robbery induction breathing technique, it was crucial to the development of this Fist Sutra. Thus, the power of the fist seal had risen sharply. Yuan Feng wanted to evade, but his movements were too slow in Chu Feng's eyes. All of his changes were in Chu Feng's eyes and couldn't escape the coverage of the fiery eyes. Their trajectories were all seen clearly, so he couldn't evade. This fist caused Chu Feng's body to emit a dazzling golden light. It was accompanied by a bloody light as it directly pierced through Yuan Feng's chest. Blood splattered everywhere, and he let out a blood-curdling scream. How is this possible? Yuan Feng was furious. Why didn't his dormant Empyrean energy protect itself in advance? Very soon, he realized something. This youth had completed the first stage of the ultimate fist, achieving a conquest that transcended races and realms. Their race was so powerful, so they naturally understood the ultimate fist. They knew how terrifying and mysterious it was. This Fist Sutra had cut off all hope of advancing. However, it had also been deduced by others. If one could cultivate it to perfection, it would be extremely terrifying. There were all kinds of unimaginable divine abilities. This fist had a life of its own. Old man, are you the reincarnation of a snail? You're incomparably slow. Eat another one of Chu Feng's fists. Chu Feng was fighting to his heart's content. It was no different from riding lightning to attack. His speed was terrifying, and his fist light was dazzling. It illuminated the entire area, causing the mountains and rivers to tremble and the earth to collapse. Thump! Yuan Feng's arm was broken. After being struck by Chu Feng, his right arm had been smashed to pieces. This is the special property of the fiery eyes. It can ignore my speed. Your eyes have mutated, and you've also cultivated the ultimate fist. I underestimated you. Don't tell me you have other legs. Yuan Feng staggered and then leapt into the air. He wanted to evade, but unfortunately, he was struck again. His right knee exploded, and blood and broken bones flew everywhere. At this moment, Chu Feng felt extreme danger. He knew that he had forced Yuan Feng into desperate strait. The other party had flown into a rage out of humiliation. His figure flashed, and he quickly retreated, rushing towards a certain direction of the secret realm. He wanted to test whether or not that strange land had any destructive power against an Empyrean. You want to leave? You can't escape. Yuan Feng was truly furious. At this point, he couldn't hold back any longer. He tried to draw upon the Empyrean level Tao Immortal to suppress Chu Feng. Boom! All things in the world trembled. The void cracked open, and the small world was about to collapse. Everything was because of the wisps of Empyrean level energy that appeared. Chu Feng held the stone jar in his hand, protecting himself. If the small world exploded, he wouldn't die a violent death. At the same time, he wanted to use the great divine King Tao fruit to size up Empyrean level characters. He wanted to see if he could kill them. However, everything exceeded his expectations. Even though he was mentally prepared, when certain things happened, he was still incomparably shaken. He arrived in front of the dried-up sea of reincarnation. That reincarnation path formed from energy ripples was still there, and he could still see the soul river. This place seemed to have a soul-summoning song from hell, strange and terrifying. Even someone as strong as Yuan Feng suddenly stiffened after chasing to this place. Then, his eyes quickly dimmed and became lifeless. He was terrified and struggled with all his might, but it was useless. He stiffly walked forward like a machine, and in the end, he actually walked towards that special path. Plop! When he fell into the dried-up sea of reincarnation, his body immediately turned into flying ash. Then, his soul light was restrained into that glowing energy passage and rushed towards the soul river. He's been killed. Chu Feng was astonished. He thought that Empyreans could avoid it. After all, those who died before were all saints. However, the result was cruel and terrifying. Powerful Empyreans were actually like those saints. After arriving here, their souls were easily taken away and they died here. Chu Feng looked at the glowing stone jar, which dyed his body with a faint layer of sparkling luster. Only this could protect him. How many epochs have you traversed? Just what kind of background do you have? Chu Feng said softly, stroking the stone jar with his hand. Even though he couldn't personally size up a Empyrean, he also felt a great sense of harvest. Great Divine King might not be able to kill a Empyrean, but he should be able to escape unscathed. In addition, if I advance a step further and become a half-step Empyrean, or even close to that, it will be enough for me to slaughter everyone. After Chu Feng calmed down, he evaluated his own strength. What to do? He still wanted to write a chapter and then some more. Please remember this book's domain name. Third Sect Master. Chapter 1363. Not much time had passed. While Chu Feng was in deep thought, another Empyrean hurried over. The small world was extremely large. The Taoist-robed old Empyrean from the Yuan family didn't discover anything after making a large circle. In the end, he hurried over to meet up with Yuan Feng. Yuan Feng! He called out softly. Then, he saw Chu Feng. Meanwhile, at this time, Chu Feng placed the stone jar in the sea of reincarnation, stopping the expansion of the special energy here, making this place much calmer. Of course, he didn't let go. Otherwise, something unexpected would likely happen to him. The reason he did this was because he wanted to suppress this place and wait for other enemies to appear. Chowda! The Taoist-robed old Empyrean's eyes were cold. He said in a low voice, "You were waiting for me?" "Yes, I was waiting to send you on your way." Shameless boasting. This Taoist-robed old Empyrean watched from the distance, but he didn't rashly approach. He was astonished when he saw that glowing passage. Your Yuan family is so sinister, wiping out the entire Yushang bloodline. Aren't you afraid that the Heavenly Emperor will return one day and settle things with you? What a joke! Can he still come back? He's most likely completely dead. Even if he doesn't die, there will be someone to stop him. You don't understand how great the heavens are. No one can be invincible forever. Then, this old Empyrean sneered and said, "It seems like you want to fight for justice, But do you have the qualifications? I still remember that I personally ended the life of Yushang's grandson. He was a genius, but he wasn't obedient enough. I used his body as an experiment and raised an exceptional sword core. It wasn't bad at all. All of his blood essence, and most importantly his spirituality, became nourishment for that sword core of mine. Now, it has become my most powerful secret treasure. As he spoke, a sword core appeared with a chong sound. It emerged from the flesh of his arm, shining with resplendent brilliance, sharp and intimidating. As soon as this green sword core appeared, this world was cut apart. It had to be said that this old Empyrean was extremely cautious. He didn't hesitate to cut open this small world and didn't rashly walk over. "You're such a vicious villain, why don't you die earlier?" Chu Feng said coldly. Then, he lifted the stone jar from the dried-up samsara sea. With a hum, the ripples in the passageway spread out like a tangible ultrasonic wave, quickly enveloping the world. The Yuan family's old heavenly venerate was directly enveloped within this area. This is... He was inwardly terrified. There was a trembling that came from his soul, a deep reverence. Then, he discovered that he couldn't help but start to walk forward. "No!" he cried, for his consciousness was fading, and he struggled. However, even though the corners of his eyes were about to crack, he still couldn't stop his body. His eyes were dripping with blood, and his body was trembling. He walked forward uncontrollably and approached the samsara sea. He walked forward step by step. His eyes gradually dimmed and his spirit disappeared. He was like a walking corpse as he approached that special passage. This path was extremely terrifying, and also extremely strange. It was like a great web formed by spiders, forming a sparkling and translucent cave that was connected to the distant Soul River. When this old heavenly venerate walked up, Chu Feng directly took action, the diamond band in his hands suddenly appearing. It spun about like the sharpest sword core. With a so sound, it passed through his neck. With a pu sound, blood splashed out, snapping his neck, making his headless corpse fall into the samsara sea. This old heavenly venerate was furious. At the final moment, he became clear-headed, knowing what happened. He was actually beheaded by a younger generation, leaving him shocked and furious. He felt incomparably humiliated and resentful. However, he only became clear-headed for a moment. A wave of bewilderment surged, and then he became unconscious again. "You personally dealt with Yushang's grandson, moreover ended his life. Today I will behead you," Chu Feng said coldly. Then, he stared at that sword core, grabbing it. Unfortunately, as this old heavenly venerate's corpse fell into the dried-up samsara sea, this sword core also disintegrated. Then, it fell apart, turning into dust. Chu Feng immediately understood that this was a weapon refined through a malicious method. This person absorbed heavenly venerate Yushang's grandson's spirituality and blood essence, refining it into a sword core, and then merging it with himself. Now, this old heavenly venerate no longer existed. The sword core also disappeared along with it. This sword core already became a part of his body. Pooh! Chu Feng kicked his head into the samsara sea. It withered and then turned into ashes. Only a streak of soul light leapt up, looking at Chu Feng with resentment. But in the end it became muddle-headed again, heading towards the Soul River. This time, Chu Feng stared fixedly at him, waiting to see his final outcome. The heavenly venerate level soul turned into a speck of light in the end, entering the Soul River. With a wave, it no longer existed. Before the Soul River, heavenly venerates were nothing more than this. Chu Feng looked at that vast and boundless river that was vast like a sea. He was absent-minded, his heart incomparably shaken. 2 heavenly venerates had died here. The Soul River summoned, and even heavenly venerates were like moths flying into a flame. It was an instinctive tendency to send them to their death. Just what kind of terrifying place was this? How many experts had been buried here since ancient times? What kind of ultimate secrets were hidden here? Chu Feng shook his head and sighed. He held the stone jar in his hand and left, walking towards the exit of the secret realm. Of course, he carefully searched along the way to avoid being ambushed by heavenly venerate. It was already impossible for the outside world to calm down. It was because 2 or 3 heavenly venerates had entered, but in the end, they were like stones sinking into the sea. They didn't even cause a splash. It was shocking. Chu Feng arrived at the exit of the secret realm. He looked outwards. No matter how hidden he was, there were still people who could sense everything about him. After all, the heavenly venerates outside didn't need to suppress their realms. Their spiritual senses were terrifyingly sharp. Chowda! At this time, the remaining powerful Yuan clan heavenly venerates' eyebrows rose up. He felt that things weren't looking good. Could it be that the Yuan family's people that entered were all killed? The 2 great heavenly venerates that joined together were actually killed? This was simply unimaginable. It was too subversive. What about Yuan Feng and the others? The Yuan family heavenly venerate that came to this battlefield shouted. He was a bit anxious. No matter what race, heavenly venerates were all high-level combat strength. If 2 or 3 of them were to die at once, it would cause everyone's vision to darken. Dead? Nonsense. What nonsense are you talking about? Where are they? The heavenly venerates' eyes were scarlet red. You don't believe me if I say I killed them? You should know that I am a great saint. They thought highly of their statuses and wanted to have a fair fight with me. We fought in the saint realm, but in the end they were all slaughtered by me. They were like chickens and dogs, unable to withstand a single blow. Chu Feng stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. He shook his head like a bookworm reciting ancient texts, making the Yuan clan heavenly venerate want to swallow him whole. Whoosh! The Yuan clan heavenly venerate couldn't bear it any longer. He directly rushed over and attacked. For a time, the world rumbled and the battlefield trembled. At the same time, an expert from the emissary's race also moved. It was a vicious beast at the heavenly venerate realm, and it also charged towards the small world. Its entire body was covered in scarlet scales, cold and intimidating. When it opened its bloody mouth, it seemed as if it could swallow the entire world. Its head was like a blood lion's, but it had no fur. Its neck was long like a dragon's, and its tail was also long like a massive snake. Its 4 strange limbs were like the claws of a fierce bird, and when they landed on the ground, the earth cracked. 1 man and 1 beast chased after each other into the secret realm. Of course, after entering, they quickly suppressed their cultivation levels. Chu Feng shouted, "Who else dares to challenge this great saint?" He wanted to kill as many enemies as he could before leaving, dealing a heavy blow to their families. After saying this, he deliberately called out Empyrean Red Void of the 9-headed bird race. Unfortunately, the others didn't say anything, mainly because they were traumatized. Those who had their thighs eaten by number 9 were still shivering. These people didn't dare to plot against Chao Deching in front of so many people. What a pity, what a pity! Chu Feng sighed. What did he mean? Everyone in the outside world was astonished. Even the Yuan race Empyrean and the beast from the sky were shaken. After entering, they didn't immediately chase after Chu Feng. "You 2 evil beasts, get over here and die!" Chu Feng shouted. Courting death. The 2 Empyreans were enraged. They closed in, but they were very vigilant. They didn't directly charge in and instead slowly moved forward, sizing up their surroundings. The aura of death. Yuan Feng and the others are dead. At this time, the Yuan race Empyrean's face was pale. His divine instinct was frighteningly high, and he could sense the aura left behind by the 2 Empyreans. Die. At this moment, he didn't hold back anymore. He realized that this place was extremely dangerous, so he used his Empyrean-level energy. He didn't hesitate to destroy this small world to kill Chu Feng. Chu Feng cursed. He also erupted with his full power, using his great divine king-level energy and the complete robbery induction breathing technique. His strength rose explosively, and he immediately triggered a heavenly tribulation. With a swoosh, he disappeared. His body shifted to the side, avoiding the Empyrean's peerless attack. With a boom, the small world disintegrated. The Empyrean-level beast roared in anger. It felt that it was about to die. The moment Chu Feng hid in the stone jar, the secret realm exploded. This was originally a saint-level secret realm. If it exceeded this limit, it would explode and collapse. But now, the Empyrean-level entity had attacked in anger. How could this small world that was already full of cracks calm down? It loudly disintegrated. Ah! The Yuan race Empyrean cried out miserably. With him at the center, it exploded. He was seriously injured, and his 4 limbs disappeared. He was blown apart by a destructive aura. The vicious beast was also disintegrating into pieces. Blood splashed everywhere. Even an Empyrean couldn't endure the explosion of this small world. "What are you doing?" the vicious beast roared. It hated the Yuan race Empyrean to the core. "This place is strange and dangerous. I can only do this. Otherwise, we might die without even knowing why." The Yuan race Empyrean replied. Then, he began to struggle bitterly to survive. That was because this place used to be extremely terrifying. It belonged to the 4th Forbidden Land and contained incomparable energy. The so-called secret realms were all high-level small worlds. Normally, even though it was cracked and could collapse at any time, it was still at that level. Now that it had exploded, there would naturally be catastrophic consequences. No. In the outside world, many people were crying out. For example, young Lady Shi. She was truly worried. She hadn't even had the chance to interact with Chu Feng alone. Now that the Empyrean was taking action and breaking the small world, she was scared. The black yak, the old donkey, and the Manchurian tiger's eyes were about to split open. Their breathing was about to stop. Even further away, Linoy's pupils constricted as she stared forward. This time was different from the past. It was 2 Empyreans taking action, and even they were disintegrated. Some people were shocked to see their severed limbs fly out. However, what was even more terrifying was that a passage appeared. It was as if sparkling and translucent ripples were spreading outwards, releasing strange fluctuations. Countless creatures seemed to be on a pilgrimage as they walked uncontrollably towards the exploding small world. The passage connected to the Soul River had appeared. This triggered a great calamity. The moment Chu Feng closed the stone jar, he saw the Soul River light up. That passage passed through the small world and wasn't affected. His heart immediately sank. The Yuan race's Empyrean has committed a sin. Chu Feng was shaken. Something big was about to happen. Great, the Soul River has appeared. Is it about to come into being? Haha, in an unknown space in the depths of the 4th Forbidden Land, a terrifying creature opened his eyes. He had been sealed for who knew how many tens of thousands of years. His eyes were too terrifying. One moment they were scarlet red like blood, and the next they were like molten gold. They were too resplendent. In particular, his eyes were as large as a sea of stars. Strands of aura seeped out, causing the heavens to tremble and tremble. It was as if the sky was about to collapse. However, he couldn't come out. He was only hoping for the appearance of the path, waiting for the Soul River to traverse the world of the living. 1. It was also at this time that the source energy of all things rumbled on the 3-sided battlefield. It suddenly descended, shaking the heavens and shaking the earth. It was as if the heavens were about to be overturned. There were supreme fluctuations that seemed to be the return of a celestial emperor. For a moment, the cries of all living beings could be heard. The ancient heavenly sounds of all races offering sacrifices to each other could be heard. It was grand and majestic, shaking the past, present, and future. What should I do? I want to write another chapter, but I'll just think about it. I'll just wash up and sleep. Please remember this book's domain name. Third Sect Master. Chapter 1364. Ah, a human tragedy. Cries rose and fell in this area. Countless evolvers were struggling, drenched in blood, broken limbs, and ruined corpses. It was like a slaughterhouse from hell, making one tremble with fear. The entire land was dyed red. Many of the evolvers of various races were geniuses, but now they were dying very miserably. In this instant, many things happened on the battlefield. The Soul River, Source Energy, Scarlet Eyes, and so on, all of them were appearing. But the most severe situation was undoubtedly that Secret Realm's great explosion. It was as if the entire Yang Realm Great World was collapsing, about to destroy all life in the world. Even the celestial venerables that had fallen inside were falling apart. One could imagine how high the level of the Secret Realm was back then, and how high the level of energy it had accumulated. Now, among the nearby creatures, not to mention ordinary evolvers, even divine kings were dying miserably one after another, all of them wailing in grief. There were Tongbi divine apes, golden-winged yakshas, and sky-splitting copper sparrows. They were all extremely powerful races that could fly away in the shortest amount of time. But now they couldn't escape. As long as they were too close, all of them would fall, covered in blood and incomparably miserable. The secret realm disintegrated. In addition to the two celestial venerables collapsing inside, the small world completely detonated. The high-level energy accumulated for millions and millions of years was activated and exploded. Among the divine kings of various races, some had their bodies severed in half, some had their heads split open, some were swallowed by the great void cracks, and some turned into a bloody paste after being battered. This place was too horrible to look at. It was truly purgatory on earth. Too many creatures had died. Of course, the most terrifying thing was that the Soul River's summoning was now starting to reveal its strange and unpredictable side. All creatures with souls, as long as they were within a certain range, couldn't struggle free now. They had no way to control themselves and were all rushing over there. And that area was still exploding. This was a mutual burning of blood and souls, a mutual sacrifice. Amidst the bloody light and fiery light, some souls fell into that special passage, rushing towards the Soul River. Some divine kings were very close. Now they forcefully stabilized their bodies, but in the end they were still like walking corpses, losing consciousness. "Come back!" a celestial venerable shouted, quickly taking action. He stood far enough away to try and save his descendant. However, when he imprisoned the divine king's body and tried to forcefully pull it back, he tore the divine king apart and only managed to snatch back half a bloody body from the passageway outside the Soul River. This kind of tragic thing happened more than once. When some experts took action to fight over the descendants of their own families, they would accidentally break their bodies. "Come, let's sacrifice this place, the more the better. The more chaotic it is, the greater my chances. I will finally see the light of day again." In the depths of the earth, one of the old monsters of the Forbidden Land had blood-red pupils that seemed to be able to pierce through the starry sky. They burned with a blinding radiance. He was longing. However, at this moment, he couldn't help but tremble. It was because he discovered that artifact again, all life source energy flowing. Back then, it was this artifact that mysteriously fell from the outer realm and killed an ancestor-level peerless expert of the clan, causing him to die with grievances. At that time, they were in a standoff with the First Mountain. A divine mountain from the First Mountain crashed into this place. At that crucial moment, a fragment flowing with all life source energy fell, causing the clan's unmatched giant to die miserably, thus speeding up the destruction of this forbidden land. "You are still here after all, you are still here." In the depths of the underground palace, a terrifying creature from an unknown space released a low roar. It felt both reverence and jealousy, wanting to obtain it. Of course, at this moment, the other people of the Yuan family who were still alive felt their blood boiling. From top to bottom, they all knew about the legend of that artifact. And now, they actually saw all life source energy flowing here. They were about to go crazy. Contact the old ancestor, invite my clan's 9-generation-old clan elders who have retired to come out of seclusion. The unmatched secret artifact has appeared, it is right here. The Yuan family's people were about to go crazy. At such a dangerous time, with such a terrifying background, they still coveted that legendary ancient artifact. Burn incense and pray, invite the ancestor to return and seize this artifact to perfect the most powerful scripture he created. From then on, he will truly be unmatched in the heavens above and earth below, undefeated from past to present. The three sides were in chaos. Blood flowed like rivers. It was unknown just how many people died, and it was unknown just how many went mad. At the same time, the emissary race that came from above the heavens coveted the artifact flowing with source energy. It was at this time that a majestic and demonic aura appeared. It was as though some creature was awakening from its ancient slumber. In front of the Soul River, under the boundless sand on the shore, a strange voice was heard. There really was a creature awakening, and what it said made everyone's blood run cold. The taste of fresh blood, this entire world will be placed on the sacrificial table. A world was going to be sacrificed. What kind of place was that? Ordinary people couldn't possibly understand the Soul River. But now, people could understand it. Once a sacrifice was made in that place, it would be a world as a unit. The entire universe's creatures would be sacrificed, and the universe's starry sea would be dyed in blood. It would be a complete annihilation. What T Soul River? Where's my brother? Brother Chufeng, where are you? What's going on? In this chaotic moment, when the evolvers of every race were terrified, the eyes of the big black yak's reincarnation turned red. He was shouting in the crowd, searching, and staring at the secret realm that was collapsing. But now it was too chaotic. No one was paying attention to what he was shouting. It was as though the end of the world had arrived on the battlefield. Chufeng, if you can still survive. At this moment, Ying Zhixian was also speaking. She was staring at the front of the battlefield where the secret realm had exploded. Rumble! The Soul River glowed and the waves beat against the shore. There were creatures crawling out from under the boundless sand. At the end of the soul, everything is supreme. But the door hasn't opened yet, so I'll be the one to preside over today's sacrifice. It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a bloody feast of an entire world. I can feel the exuberant vitality. This world is very big and very prosperous. Very good, let the sacrifice begin. There really was a creature crawling out from the Soul River. As its rotten wings flapped, a monstrous gray mist rose into the sky. It was practically going to cover the myriad worlds. It wasn't a humanoid creature, but among its three heads, the one in the middle was humanoid. It was just that the gray mist was too thick, and no one could see the specific situation of its true body. Buzz. Following its appearance, the source chi of all things surged. That fragment seemed to have activated some kind of attribute, and it swooped down from the chaotic land without order. But in the end, it was only a broken artifact. In fact, it couldn't even be considered a broken artifact. It was just a fragment. Moreover, because the fierce battle back then was too bitter, it didn't leave behind too much artifact spirit will. There was only that trace of obsession, only that kind of instinct that was driving it. As the Celestial Emperor, I should suppress all enemies in the world. At this moment, a shout rang out, but it didn't come from the source chi of all things. Instead, it came from the center of the secret realm's explosion. At this moment, the stone jar was sparkling and translucent. It was almost transparent. Chufeng saw everything in the outside world. The human world was miserable, blood flowed like a river, and the earth was scarlet red. He thought of the scene shown to him by the large black dog and number 9, as well as the shocking scene shown in the imprint given to him by Yushang. He thought of the appearance of the complete source chi when it soared through the sky, and he couldn't help but shout like this. In an instant, his voice was strengthened by the stone jar, and actually spread out in a special way, traveling especially far. At this moment, the fragment wrapped in the source chi actually rumbled, and a dazzling light erupted. It resonated with it, as if it had been completely activated. In the past, the light that was invincible in the world suddenly appeared again at this moment. The source chi of all things resonated, and then between the mountains and rivers and all things, there were its runes, its aura, and the prayers of all living beings. Endless sounds of worship rang out continuously. As the celestial emperor, I should suppress all enemies in the world. At this moment, an indistinct voice rang out from that fragment, and it truly shook the three battlefields. It made all things in the world stop, and made the waves in the Soul River go dormant, no longer creating any wave. Boom! At the same time, that fragment, wrapped in the source chi of all things, was like a comet as it streaked across the sky. At this moment, it illuminated the entire land of the Yang realm. With a whoosh, it completely submerged into that special passage. It crashed into the energy reincarnation path formed by the ripples, and it directly suppressed the Soul River. Who? At this moment, the terrifying being that presided over the sacrifice and wanted to use the living beings of an entire great world as a sacrifice felt his hair stand on end. That was because he actually couldn't resist it. He was intimidated by an enormous pressure to the point where his entire body was bleeding, and there were cracks all over his body. It's you again. You guys are killing your way back again? He who had just awakened didn't seem to understand the situation yet. Pooh! Along with the sound of, as the celestial emperor, I should suppress all enemies in the world, that fragment fell and blasted the body of the being that had awakened from under the sand. In just a split second, his rotten wings exploded, and his spine also broke into pieces. Then, his body split into pieces, and blood splashed 3 kilometers high. He let out a blood-curdling scream as he fell down. Next, his soul light exploded. Even though he was at the Soul River, he couldn't enter the Soul River. His entire body disintegrated, and then both his body and soul were destroyed. However, as the source chi of all things flowed and reappeared in this place, the end of the Soul River also underwent changes. It was like a pair of ancient doors were slowly turning, and they were about to be pushed open. Chapter 1365. After the rotten wings exploded and the creature that was going to sacrifice its blood to the Yang realm disintegrated, the entire Soul River calmed down and didn't have a single ripple. However, amidst this silence, the terror of the special sound that occasionally came from the end of the Soul River became even more apparent. It was as if an ancient door that had been submerged in darkness and dust for hundreds of millions of years was being slowly pushed open. It was going to open from the dense fog and reappear in the world. Clang! Especially towards the end, the sound became clearer and broke the silence of this area. Boundless oppression and darkness seemed to be surging over violently. This was an indescribable feeling. Even though they were separated by the Soul River and countless years had passed and galaxies were extinguished, all the evolvers on the 3 battlefields were still terrified. They couldn't help but tremble, and even their soul light was shivering. Everyone was uneasy, as if the end of the world was coming. Even the strong celestial venerables were going limp on the ground, let alone the other creatures. All the evolvers that were too close to that special passage were already covered in cracks and collapsed on the ground. It was the same for the divine kings, and some of the weaker creatures had even turned into a pool of blood. This was boundless oppression. Even if only wisps of it flowed out, it was still extremely terrifying. At this most terrifying moment, some regions in the Yang realm also underwent a shocking change. In a certain dark swamp, boundless fog rose up and the world seemed to have darkened. It covered the firmament, causing the heaven and earth to crack and disintegrate. Meanwhile, in a certain land of fire essence, it was also suddenly recovering. All of a sudden, great flames overflowed and burned the sky. The entire horizon was distorted and space was collapsing. The flames seemed to cover the 33 heavens. In some other places, the entire desert was trembling. Yellow sand rose up violently and revealed the endless terrifying truth under the prehistoric earth. Fresh blood surged up like a river, flowing horizontally and vertically. Then, even the sky was dripping blood as it fell down. Strange phenomena appeared everywhere and it was extremely terrifying. In a trance, even the sun was obscured. A black sun covered the sky and all the heavens were silent. Even the galaxies were trembling. There was a kind of oppression in the land of the Yang realm and even the outer realm. It was as if the most terrifying thing was about to happen and was about to spread to the heavens. This kind of oppressiveness, this kind of terrifying pressure, this kind of bad omen and clues was about to exceed the limits of this realm. The three battlefields shone. If not for the existence of special artifacts, everyone here would have died. Perhaps not a single person would have survived. In that boundless strangeness, under the terrifying gray ripples, an invisible and despairing aura spread, but it was blocked by the source chi of all things. Gradually, the fragments in the source chi of all creation were interrupted. Otherwise, no one could imagine the terrifying consequences. Even so, the three battlefields were still in a terrifying state, causing the celestial venerables to be suppressed to the point of self-detonation. Countless evolvers lay on the ground, panting silently as they gulped down the essence of heaven and earth. Many people were bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their eyes were covered in dark red liquid. Their faces were distorted as they endured the pain, helplessness, and despair of hovering between life and death. The source energy of all things circulated, and that fragment traversed across the Soul River. It swirled with densely packed great Tao symbols, heaven and earth resonating with it, all Tao trembling. It became more and more resplendent, resisting the pressure. The unknown was the most terrifying thing in the fog. That slow and powerful sound was truly like the movement of an ancient gate from the prehistoric era. It was extremely intimidating. In the darkness, a formless energy appeared. It was as if a strange domain was reviving, causing the void to tremble. Something was about to come out, wishing to sweep through the 10,000 worlds. Then, in the fog, rumbling sounds sounded from the end of the dusky Soul River. Then, there were sounds of chains shaking, as if a vicious beast that was trapped in a cage was walking out. Oppressive, oppressive. Hong. Suddenly, the source chi of all things surged. The fragment it wrapped around became sparkling and translucent, and then it released dazzling radiance, illuminating the heavens. The frozen battlefield immediately seemed to be illuminated by tens of thousands of heavenly suns, as if it immediately illuminated the endless time and space. It was as if all of the radiance from past generations gathered on this day. It was just too resplendent and too holy. Meanwhile, at this moment, the Soul River also surged, as if it was boiling. Endless brilliance erupted, and the Soul River that stretched for millions and millions of li was boundless. The entire body was shaking, rumbling. All of this was because that fragment was shining, releasing millions and millions of symbols. Even heaven and earth were resonating with it. Moreover, it was attacking. In the darkness, the terrifying aura at the end of the Soul River pervaded the air. That formless energy was spreading over, as if it was going to destroy everything in its way. Chong. King Chong sounds rang out from within the source chi. Symbols burned, and that fragment fiercely pushed forward, directly suppressing over. The two were going to collide. Heavens, this is the Soul River. There really is something at the end of that place. Back then, even the Celestial Emperor overlooked it and missed that place, unable to slaughter his way into the final trial. Now, it is going to come into being. At this moment, in a certain mountain and river in the Yang realm, there was an old monster who had lived for an extremely long time, his origins unknown, that shouted in a low voice. His hair stood on end and he was roused awake. One could see just how deep the waters of the Yang realm were. There was actually someone who directly recognized the so-called Soul River, and he even knew some of the legends related to the Celestial Emperor and the end of the Soul River. The most powerful power surged. In the mist, at the end of the Soul River, there was a fluctuation that exceeded the understanding of ordinary people. It was so terrifying that even the heavens were trembling, and all things in the world were wailing and shivering. Wasn't it said that no one could open up the end of the Soul River and explore the secrets there? Everything was just a legend, but today, why is it coming into being on its own? Back then, even the Celestial Emperor didn't discover the strangeness and overlooked that place. Is it really going to open up now? This also proves that there really is something there, that there is boundless terror. Some people said with trembling voices. They were in the famous mountains and great rivers, their bodies withered like rotten wood, but they still tenaciously lived on. Chong. In the source chi, that fragment streaked across the fragments of time. In the end, it even passed through the obstruction of the river of time and shot to the end of the Soul River. It was like an incomparably sharp and unmatched sword radiance as it pierced into the dusky darkness. Dang. It was obstructed. There was something formless or some power that appeared, blocking its path and making its speed in midair become slower and slower. Great waves overflowed into the heavens. The Soul River surged and sparkling soul light curled about. Some of the Soul River's waves actually directly hit the edge of the special passage, wanting to pass through the reincarnation road and reach the Yang realm. This was simply crossing millions and millions of miles of spacetime. That kind of aura was too terrifying. The Soul River seemed to have burst its banks. If this surged out, it was simply going to destroy the world and shock the past and present. A faint and indistinct sound rang out from the end of the Soul River, matching the atmosphere there quite well. However, the expressions of some prehistoric monsters in the Yang realm changed. What was that? The legendary primal chaos tribulation crossing song, was it the true complete chapter? In the Yang realm, there was a certain forbidden land that also had this wonderful technique and this song score. However, all the supreme experts that truly understood it knew that this forbidden land was missing the final chapter. The people of the world mistakenly believed that they had the complete chapter, but in reality it was still a fragment. From ancient times until now, the primal chaos tribulation crossing song was one of the top 3 supreme techniques, but it was actually only a kind of music at the end of the Soul River. It didn't display its might there and didn't reveal its ultimate power. Instead, it was just a kind of background music. This was really too terrifying and made everyone's scalps go numb. What would happen if someone really took action? Boom. The origin energy of all things burned. The fragment it wrapped around was extremely dazzling, as if it had penetrated the past, present, and future. The voice of the past Celestial Emperor seemed to have sounded again. That faintly discernible male voice, even though it sounded a bit indistinct, possessed an eternal and unrivaled power. There was a great boldness that could suppress all enemies in the past, present, and future. I am the Celestial Emperor, suppress all enemies. With a boom sound, the fragment in the origin energy broke through the obstruction and directly penetrated the formless symbols and energy. It destroyed the boundless Soul River's great waves and fell into the depths of the end. At the same time, the primal chaos tribulation crossing song changed into another faint and strange sound. Then, it became resounding. Not good. Once this kind of energy erupts, even heaven and earth will be damaged. A great calamity is about to strike. There were old monsters who were trembling and wished they could escape the Yang realm. In the dusky darkness, there were dazzling symbols that lit up. Were those scriptures? They lined up together and formed a vortex to imprison the fragment in the origin energy. Then, that ancient door trembled violently. Some ferocious beast, seemed to be struggling free. It erupted. However, at this moment, the source energy couldn't be stopped either. It suppressed downwards. Dang. Waves erupted. The limits of the Soul River seemed like they were going to dry up. At this moment, quite a few people clearly saw the truth reflected there. There really was a door. It was submerged by the mottled passage of time, buried by the dust of history. It had experienced too many great changes, ancient and old-fashioned. Moreover, that place was extremely indistinct. Everything that approached that place would distort. At this moment, the fragment in the source energy was unstoppable and unstoppable. Its entire body was resplendent to the extreme. When it pierced through that ancient door, there was actually blood that flowed out. Chong! It pierced through and nailed itself onto the door. It wanted to break through and uncover the truth that had never been revealed since ancient times until now. However, this place really was extremely terrifying. When that fragment pierced through the door and nailed itself onto it, about to break this place apart, a terrifying aura erupted. That day, the reincarnation path trembled and the soul river surged. The Yang realm seemed like it was going to explode, and the creatures of the outer realms were going to suffocate. The heavens seemed like they were going to explode. Hung Long. That ancient door violently trembled and surged with terrifying energy. Something was going to make its way out. Dang. At this time, by the Soul River, another object also shone and was activated. It was precisely the weapon fragment of the large black dog's master from back then. It was a clock fragment that was left on the ground. It was dyed with blood and had words and symbols on it. It suddenly rose into the air and shot towards the limits of the Soul River. Chong. It also flew over, passing through the Soul River and nailing itself onto the door. It was going to crush this place to pieces. Similarly, after it was inserted into the mottled and old-fashioned door, there was also blood flowing out. It was extremely terrifying. Hung Long. The Soul River overflowed into the heavens. In that darkness, that indistinct place surged with unknown things and matter. It was actually going to drown out that place and distort everything. Meanwhile, at this moment, by the Soul River, that damaged tablet that was left behind by the expert who sliced through the past and present with a single sword also shone and began to tremble. On the shore, an endless sea of sand flew up and overflowed into the heavens. As the stone tablet trembled, it poured towards the limits of the Soul River. The stone tablet shone and its symbols shone resplendently. The banks of the Soul River completely erupted. All types of energy and symbols intertwined in this region. Chapter 1366. Ghosts wept and deities howled. Sand and stones flew about, and the starry river was torn apart. Something inconceivable happened at the Soul Riverside. Intense collisions and all types of energy tangled together. In that instant, a hazy mist pervaded the air, wishing to spread towards the three battlefields and emerge through that special passage. Meanwhile, the current battlefield was extremely terrifying. Many small worlds were affected. They were currently exploding and continuously disintegrating. This was a tragedy for the human world. At the end of the Soul River, the stone tablet shone. Yellow sand filled the sky and danced about. These were all former souls, but they turned into sand and accumulated here. Now, they were whistling through this strange land. Great waves overflowed into the heavens. Ear-piercing cries sounded from within the Soul River. There were beast roars and malicious spirits weeping. There were even stars rolling about, falling from the dusky sky. They all carried blood as they fell into the Soul River. Putong. The waves became even greater, cleansing the heavens and submerging the sky. This area was simply unimaginable. The Soul River howled in grief as blood-dyed stars fell from the sky. It made the millions and millions of li-wide Soul River rumble and set off world-shocking waves everywhere. As for the other end, the bell and cauldron rang out in unison. Those two fragments resonated and erupted with incomparable energy to break through the ancient gate. On the mottled old gate was a dark red expanse. Terrifying blood was flowing. That blood was too sinister and had a boundlessly strange aura. This was the blood that seeped out from within the gate. Was there some creature that was injured? It was difficult to distinguish. After the blood appeared on the gate, heaven and earth became sinister. A terrifying aura expanded. That blood actually wanted to refine the fragments within the source energy. At this time, in the rear, the stone tablet rumbled. Endless yellow sand melted, and turned into a special type of divine granule. There was also a portion that turned into ancestral matter. It covered the sky and earth as it smashed towards the gate. In that instant, that area became indistinct. Moreover, a muffled sound could vaguely be heard from that gate. It was as if the gate was opening, but also as if a fierce beast was reviving. Its throat moved and a syllable was released. At this moment, the outside world was a mess. It was incomparably terrifying. After wisps of mist leaked out from the energy passage, it caused many secret realms to collapse. It was bloody and cruel, making everyone tremble in fear. The only fortunate thing was that the small world Chu Feng was in had disintegrated first. The bodies of the two Empyreans had been torn apart, and their blood had splashed onto the wretched earth. This had already caused many people to be terrified, and they quickly fled the regions where the various mystic realms were located. Otherwise, it was unknown how many people would have died tragically and how many evolvers would have been annihilated. They would have been buried in the exploded secret realm. Even so, a destructive hurricane was formed in this place. 23 small worlds exploded one after another. Balls of dazzling light blossomed as if they were going to burn the world of the living. At the center of the explosion, there were heavenly deities who howled, struggling intensely, reluctant to leave this world. However, they couldn't stop the great winds, quickly dying. They were the two celestial venerables whose corporeal bodies had disintegrated after the explosion of the secret realm where Chu Feng was. Part of their soul light had escaped, and they originally had hopes of surviving. But now, with the deterioration of this area, both of them had died tragically. In the end, not even the slightest bit of soul light was left as it was burnt to ashes. Of course, there was still more than half of the soul light that was drawn into the energy passageway and turned into two light specks that submerged into the soul river. Chowda! The six-eared macaque shouted. He was sure that this sworn brother of his was finished and that he would never see him again. That was because even two heavenly deities had been annihilated in body and soul, so how could a great sage survive alone? Mi Qing, Li Jiuxiao, and the others also sighed. They hadn't known Chao De for long on the battlefield, but as a disciple of the First Mountain, he actually died tragically here? Brother! The big black yak, the old donkey, and the Manchurian tiger also shouted. Their eyes were red. They had just reunited, but could it be that he was going to die again? At this moment, they had long since retreated far enough to avoid this great calamity. All the evolvers who were too close died tragically. They didn't have their soul light sucked away and sent flying into the soul river millions and millions of kilometers away, or they were crushed by the disintegration of the small worlds. At this moment, even the heavenly deities had no way to do anything. They didn't dare to approach because whoever went over would die. One day I will return. At this moment, a voice rang out. Chu Feng was whispering from within the stone jar. He was going to leave and take advantage of the chaos to drive the stone jar far away and break away from this battlefield. He had heard these words from the stone tablet earlier. Now, he was going to evolve. He hoped to rise quickly and step on his own path. The world had already changed greatly. He needed to become stronger in order to have a foothold in this world. Otherwise, he would only be a pitiful ant in the future. Not to mention participating in the game of chaos, he might be trampled to death by the giant foot of the dragon in the sky if he wasn't careful. The stone jar soared through the air and didn't receive the guidance of the soul river. On the contrary, it completely dispersed the wisps of overflowing mist. In the end, before the stone jar left, it shone even more brightly and shook off that path. It almost cut off the connection between the soul river and this battlefield. Chu Feng trembled. At this moment, the stone jar was sparkling and translucent, almost transparent. He could see everything outside. How could it have such great power? At this point, people could only vaguely see the scene at the end of the soul river. Did you guys hear that? I think I heard Chowda's voice just now. What did he say? Some people didn't believe it. However, there were indeed a few people who were especially sharp and felt as if they had heard his words. It seems like, I will return one day. Was he unwilling to give up? He still wants to reincarnate and come back? Some people were bewildered. There were indeed some people who heard it, but 99% of them didn't believe it. A great sage dared to boast shamelessly and could even reappear in this world? At this moment, many powerhouses from the Yang realm rushed to the 3 battlefields to witness this calamity from afar. They wanted to evaluate the consequences of this great calamity in the future. At this moment, the most regretful person was young Lady Shi. She didn't have time to meet with Chu Feng and talk with him in secret before he disappeared. Zhou Shi was very worried and terrified. She couldn't stay calm anymore. She was afraid that Chu Feng would really die in the process of the secret realm's collapse. Even though she knew that he had some tricks up his sleeves, she still felt her hands and feet go cold. Big brother Chu Feng. The silver-haired little Lolita also whispered in the dark. Her face was full of tears and she was heartbroken. At this moment, her sister Ying Zhixian looked at the burning secret realm and was lost in thought. She only had some kind of complicated emotions now that part of her memory had been cut off. Chowda, your death is not to be regretted. Unfortunately, where is the imprint of Yushang's bloodline? It will be severed from now on. Ah, I hate you so much. A group of powerhouses from the Yuan clan rushed over. They were incomparably resentful. Many people's eyes emitted cold and frightening beams of light as they opened and closed. They were full of regret. Chowda, you still want to come back and reappear? Don't you know who you are? What qualifications do you have? But I really hope that you can come back and bring the imprint back. An old man from the Yuan clan growled and clenched his fists. His hair had all turned yellow. This was a powerhouse who had personally come to the scene. Unfortunately, he came too late. However, as if responding to him, there was actually a voice that shocked everyone. One day I will return. However, this wasn't the voice of the 3 battlefields. It was the mysterious fluctuation emitted by the damaged stone tablet in the Soul River. It made everyone feel as if they had received some kind of spiritual attack in a split second. Their soul light seemed to freeze momentarily. The people of the Yuan clan felt their blood run cold. Was it the same as what Chowda had said? Everyone was shocked and then dumbfounded. Boom! The Soul River shook violently as people saw the final terrifying scene. The road was about to be completely cut off. Everything became indistinct. At the final juncture, all the characters on the stone tablet shone. Moreover, it rose from the ground and suppressed the end of the Soul River. The divine and the terrifying fused and exploded. Boundless ancestral Taoist matter boiled and drowned the door. In addition, the bell and cauldron rang and shone at the same time, evaporating the blood seeping out of the door. That strange blood couldn't melt them. Boom! Yellow sand filled the sky and completely covered the end of the Soul River. The stone tablet pressed down and made the door wail. Blood splashed 3,000 feet high and the strange mist expanded rapidly. Did the stone tablet suppress that place? Then, even the stone tablet and the broken pieces of the bell and cauldron disappeared in that area. Many people wanted to know what happened there after all. However, that area became more and more indistinct. Even the road leading outside was broken. Everything became dark and unpredictable. However, at this time, resentful souls howled and wanted to escape from the Soul River. They struggled free and brought back some news for people. The end of the Soul River hasn't opened and they haven't returned, but it's already like this. My last strand of true spirit can't be preserved either. Is it going to be destroyed? Previously, the creature with rotten wings actually didn't completely die out. He left behind a strand of true spirit will that attached itself to some special damaged armor. That damaged armor shone and wanted to break free and escape from the Soul River. However, now, that damaged armor was burning and quickly turning into ashes. He also screamed miserably. The last strand of true spirit will also collapsed and could no longer appear. At this moment, someone from the Yang realm spoke. Even someone like you wants to sacrifice the Yang realm, great realm? You mistook this for a small world. This is one of the old lands from back then. You've recognized the wrong place. Everyone was overwhelmed with shock. Who was speaking? Your grandfather is speaking, woof. A large black dog reached out its enormous head. It was unknown where it was as it projected itself onto the great earth. At its side, there was a damaged bell with the corpse of a middle-aged man with disheveled hair lying on top of it. It actually appeared again mainly because of the strange soul power that appeared at the end of the Soul River. It caused the corpse of the damaged bell to resonate, causing the giant black beast to also become vigilant. I can feel it. That person's cauldron is also resonating. I'm going to find him. I believe he's definitely still alive. The giant black beast growled and its projection disappeared. At this moment, everyone realized that the true decisive battle at the end of the Soul River hadn't happened. There was only the resonance and collision of weapon fragments. That strange land had never truly opened from the beginning. Through the voice of the creature with rotten wings, they knew that the true thing behind the door had never appeared. Now, perhaps it was only a preview of the true eruption in the future. But today, the Soul River appeared and the aura that expanded there was too astonishing. Moreover, the bell and cauldron rang together and the stone tablet suppressed the vile earth at the last moment, releasing a terrifying signal. Strange phenomena appeared everywhere in the Yang realm. Moreover, something even more terrifying happened. Incomparable energy flowed in the sky, and then a crack split open. A piece of yellow paper floated down. It was burning and for a moment, its aura was too terrifying. It actually caused some stars in the starry seas in the outer realms to burn along with it. What's going on? Heavens, some areas in the outer realms are starting to burn. The Yang realm has encountered great calamities again and again today. Is it really going to be destroyed? At this moment, even the celestial venerables were crying out in alarm. They simply couldn't believe the reality before their eyes. What kind of mighty power is this? A powerhouse looked incomparably weak. He was trembling and his body was haggard. He couldn't even stand stably. His face was full of shock as he looked up at the sky. Could it be that the power of the heavens has alarmed that place? An emissary from the outer realms whispered with a deathly pale face. The yellow paper burned and the great Tao of the Yang realm rumbled. As if it had sensed something, the complete order of the world recovered and the entire Yang realm great world shook with boundless energy. That was only a piece of yellow paper filled with words, yet it actually had such power to cause such an outcome. It was ignited. In the process of falling, the sky split apart, accompanied by specks of blood. The only fortunate thing was that it turned into ashes in the end. A portion of the ashes floated down to the battlefield and blocked the final crack leading to the battlefield from the Soul River, covering this place. There was also a portion of ashes that floated into the distance and landed on the first mountain. At this moment, Number 9 suddenly raised his head. Chapter 1367. At this moment, Number 9's face was distorted. It was unknown whether his eyes were rapidly contracting from shock or from excitement as they condensed into two symbols. His entire body was shaking and trembling as if he had seen the most inconceivable thing. His body was convulsing, and it was impossible to tell whether it was due to excessive fear or extreme excitement. There weren't many ashes that fluttered down here, but it formed a great mist that completely submerged the first mountain. The terrain could no longer be seen. The heavens split apart and blood was still dripping down. The ashes that fell were only specks and specks. There was only a small amount of them, but the consequences were extremely terrifying. The yellow paper burned and completely turned into ashes. They drifted down to the battlefield and covered the path connected to the Soul River. Rumble. Moreover, at this moment, the world changed greatly. It was as if it was turning upside down and about to be overturned. This region was densely packed with domain symbols. They erupted with undying radiance and shot up violently. The entire Yang realm's underground ancestral vein seemed to be flipping over. It was as if millions upon millions of objects were smashing down from beyond the heavens, about to sink the three battlefields. Everyone was overwhelmed with shock. They simply couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was just a small amount of ash, yet it actually underwent a strange transformation. The substance that seemed like it could be blown away with a single breath now formed a mountain upon landing. This type of transformation was too astonishing. What exactly was the origin of that yellow paper? Who left it behind and who wrote it? Now, after it was burned and turned into ashes, it could actually become like this? The boundless great mountain rose steeply from the ground. It was too grand and boundless, majestic and intimidating. It was entirely black, powerful and majestic as it towered above the clouds. It suppressed this place, completely covering the broken path of the Soul River and suppressing it below so that it could no longer be seen. The black mountain peak towered here, giving off an oppressive and boundless feeling. It was simply too powerful, and one couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. A bit of ash had become a great peak that suppressed everything. It had suddenly appeared just like that. On the battlefield, the experts of all clans were shaken. They were stupefied. Whose handiwork was this? Only the emissary's clan was trembling. They seriously suspected that this might have come from the heavens. Otherwise, how could it be like this? Of course, they also believed that there were creatures with this level of strength in the heavens. Otherwise, how could the Soul River exist for so long and the ultimate evolvers shed blood? Boom! The endless black mountain ridge shook violently. A formless pressure was released between the main peak. The majestic great peak shook one last time and completely suppressed the battlefield. This place had calmed down, and all the abnormalities had been swept away. It was as if nothing had ever happened, but everyone knew that the Yang realm was different. They always felt that the world had become more and more magnificent. In this world, the great Tao has become even clearer. I can see order arranged, chains of law stretching across the sky, floating beyond the heavens. There was a great being who was overwhelmed with shock. His pupils constricted, and he felt a wave of fear, making him feel a strong sense of uneasiness. He discovered that it was becoming more and more strenuous for his decaying body now, and he didn't dare to act blindly without thinking. He was afraid that he would be injured by the recoil of the Yang realm after he destroyed the world. The world's laws have been reorganized, and order has become even stronger. In the Yang realm, a deep voice was heard from the extreme north. The martial madman was awakened and revealed a pair of pupils that were more terrifying than the sun in the darkness. That type of pressure was something all of his disciples could sense. They all trembled, feeling as if their bodies were going to explode. Even those as powerful as Empyreans couldn't endure it. "Founding Master wants to take another step forward?" Someone cried out involuntarily. The environment of this world is becoming more and more mature. It's no longer a blessing for all living beings, but an ultimate evolver? As the martial madman's eyes opened and closed, even time was in disorder. There were many giant star cores floating in the void in this area, and all of them were resonating. With a single thought, some of the broken stars rotated and rumbled, forming a terrifying great Tao fluctuation that covered the extreme north. Then, it expanded and enveloped the boundless ocean. Is Founding Master going to be invincible in the heavens and earth? Some people were dumbfounded, and then they became shocked and excited. If the martial madman could become invincible throughout the ages and become unparalleled in the world, his disciples would also be able to dominate the world. Who would dare to disrespect him? The mysteries of heaven are unclear, and the great Tao is obscure. Who can leap up and transform into an invincible body? It's hard to say. My master has the mandate of heaven, so I must also fight for it. Or perhaps the other lineages of living beings want to evolve. The martial madman muttered to himself. Then, his eyes were like immortal swords, emitting a resounding radiance. At this moment, a portion of the powerhouses in various parts of the Yang realm had a special reaction. Someone was going to achieve supreme Tao and was going to compete in the near future to set foot on that highest domain. In the Eastern Harmony Prefecture, between a certain great mountain where lightning and fire interweaved, large amounts of heavenly tribulation ashes rose. This was the place where Harmony Prefecture's former overlord cultivated in seclusion. In ancient times, he had once disintegrated and was killed by the primal chaos heavenly tribulation. In that era, he had once unified the vast territory of the Yang realm, but in this life, he made a comeback. In reality, he had never died. Back then, when he was blasted into charcoal by the most powerful heavenly tribulation, he only went into hiding, withdrawing, not completely dying. At this moment, golden mist filled the air between his mouth and nose. Then, it enveloped his entire body. His aura surged violently and was extremely terrifying. However, he could not help but let out a sigh. Even though he was still the overlord of this generation, his senior uncle had appeared. He was known as the Invincible Feather Emperor. Moreover, not long ago, the Feather Emperor took action, killing the overlord of the southern Zhan province. Moreover, it was a double kill, killing those two martial brothers. I still can't accept this. I still have a chance to become the ultimate evolver, he muttered to himself. His blood energy pervaded the air, and his bones crackled. In a split second, he became a robust young man. His blood essence was like the sea, and he was at the peak of his life. For a moment, the world darkened and the group of stars dimmed. The light of the great Tao surrounded his body, but it was gradually restrained as it absorbed all energy. At this moment, a terrifying phenomenon also occurred in the Western He province. There were a few legendary ancient temples that had never appeared in the world since the prehistoric era, but today, the sound of chanting came from them. There were people chanting sutras. There were ancient temples that seemed to have returned from the primal chaos. They gradually approached the mortal world and returned to the Yang realm with a distant Tao rhythm. The ultimate evolver will no longer be a legend. He should appear, and he will be the reincarnation of Buddha. A calm voice came from one of the ancient temples. This kind of sound wave rang out in the hearts of all the people of the Buddhist race. It was like the great vibration of a great golden bell. It was rumbling, cleansing the soul light of people and intimidating this era. Similar things were also happening in the famous mountains and great rivers. In the Yang realm, all of the famous mountains and great rivers were secret lands. They were all important places that couldn't be set foot in. There were even some regions that even the most powerful clans in the Yang realm didn't approach. One could well imagine how terrifying they were. That was because there might be old monsters lying dormant and sleeping in any of the extraordinary terrains. There were some people who didn't even belong to this era. Their residences didn't belong to this world, and they were only connected by great Tao symbols. They were related to the Yang realm. At this time, there were famous mountains and great rivers that shone as expected. Resplendent symbols illuminated the boundless mountains and rivers. Among them, after a few auras appeared, the entire Yang realm was lightly crying. There were prehistoric legends among them, as well as unknown unmatched creatures. At the same time, there were even creatures buried in the same generation as the Celestial Emperor. In addition, there were great evil spirits, fallen immortal kings, and others. They also revived in some secret lands and stayed in the Yang realm back then. On this day, the Yang realm wasn't peaceful. All types of unimaginable and abnormal scenes appeared. A great change had begun. Soul rivers, yellow paper, ashes. Scene after scene, after all types of unforeseen events appeared one after another, it caused many evolvers to keenly sense that something big was going to happen. On that day, an enormous beam of light blossomed between heaven and earth. It was as if the heavens were being split open, causing the entire Yang realm sky to be enshrouded in mist. The laws of the great Tao interweaved endlessly. Many people watched with horror as all types of Tao marks interweaved and all types of laws smelted to condense into a human figure. It was as if a supreme Tao body was being developed. Later on, it changed again. The various great Tao symbols turned into a creature with 4 heads and 8 arms. It faced all directions and suppressed the world. When its eyes opened and closed, divine radiance pierced through the 4 seas. Following that, it changed again, turning into an immortal bird. It spread its wings and rose into the air. Its feathers were like chains of heaven that hung down and penetrated the 6 directions. In the next moment, the immortal bird disappeared. Those laws turned into an expanse of gray mist. Within the haze, it was howling miserably and incomparably terrifying. Soon after, the fallen immortal king appeared. Black light blossomed, and the immortal race's divine aura merged into one with the darkness. When its eyes opened and closed, the immortal race's incomparable energy erupted, about to penetrate eternity. On this day, the great Tao in the sky continuously developed, turning into all types of creatures. They were all condensed from the great Tao's traces. An ultimate evolver is going to appear. The races that appeared just now all have hopes of merging with the Tao and realizing the ultimate leap. All the races were shaken. As long as they appeared in the great Tao and were formed from Tao marks, there was a chance of unmatched creatures being born. The entire world was momentarily shocked. Many people's eyes burned with desire. Their hearts surged, and then their blood began to boil. Was the ultimate evolver, a creature that only existed in legends, going to appear? Some people were looking forward to it, hoping that their own race would have an ancient ancestor rise up and become an ultimate existence. Many things happened on this day. Only after a long time did people find out that the location of the first mountain was covered in mist and could no longer be seen. 2 days later, the great mist completely dispersed. A majestic mountain peak appeared, piercing straight into the clouds and entering the heavens. A large portion of the ruined area of the first mountain range was covered in mist. The first mountain has been destroyed? Or could it be that the first mountain has regrown? People were bewildered and didn't know what was going on. Some people said that the first mountain was finished, that it had been targeted by the heavens and completely flattened. There were others who said that the first mountain had been reborn. The broken peak from back then was reconstructed, growing out from the ground and once again standing tall in the world. People became increasingly convinced that the world's changes had begun. There were many things that exceeded expectations and became increasingly unfathomable. The emissary from the heavens left hurriedly that day to report back to the clan. An earth-shattering event was about to take place in the Yang realm, and perhaps there would be great opportunities. There were some forbidden lands and ancient paths that could connect to the outer realms, and some people passed on the news. There are changes in the Yang realm. Great cosmos-level creatures and experts with the ultimate path can all come and compete. A blood-stained letter fluttered through the fragments of time. It was extremely bewitching to send a letter to the people of the outer realms, and even to other creatures on the branch paths of evolutionary civilizations. However, all of this temporarily had nothing to do with Chu Feng. He took advantage of the chaos to smoothly leave the 3 battlefields. At this moment, he was in a very modern city. Row upon row of tall buildings towered into the clouds. The lights flickered at night, and the entire city was extremely gorgeous. All kinds of buildings were made of special composite materials. Some flowed with a metallic luster, while others returned to their natural state. But no matter what, it couldn't hide the fact that this wasn't a city of gods and devils. There were spaceships moving about, drawing out dazzling beams of light in the sky. Additionally, there were all kinds of flying saucers and small spaceships parked on top of many buildings, sparkling with a metallic luster. Chu Feng was absent-minded. Having been in the Yang realm for so long, he had almost forgotten that there were gods and devils in this vast land, as well as all kinds of human and technological civilizations. So much so that the weapons developed by the latter were boundlessly powerful and could slaughter gods and devils. It was just that the terrain of the Yang realm was too complicated, and some areas weren't suitable for warships to traverse the skies. Among them, the 3 battlefields were located in such a terrain. That was why such weapons couldn't be thrown over. At this moment, Chu Feng walked into a building that was blooming with multicolored light. Its interior was very large, and the combination of science and technology with the gods and devils made it gorgeous and practical. This place was known as the place with the most complete history books in the Yang realm. It was the accumulation of the painstaking efforts of past generations, and it was open to the public. He came here to search for some information, and then he prepared to go to a place to quickly increase his strength. Now, he wanted to use the information here to do some research and planning. Suddenly raising his head, Chu Feng's pupils shrank as he saw a scene on a large screen. Ziluan, his maid in the little underworld, the timid, fearful, and sometimes very arrogant woman after she was captured by him, Ziluan. She had now been forced to reveal her original form and had turned into a purple luan bird, trapped in a birdcage. Chu Feng's gaze was faint, and he didn't make a sound. He stared for a long time. During this period, several days had passed. Unforeseen events had occurred in the Yang realm, and the news that an ultimate evolver might be born had already spread. Moreover, creatures from the outer realm had come. Above the heavens, 5 myths have descended. 5 heavenly creatures, known as myths, have come to the Yang realm. A secret rumor spread. The Yang realm isn't bad. The rules are complete, and an ultimate evolver is indeed going to appear. We can't hope for it. In the end, we're still too young, but we still have to fight for a great opportunity. On that day, there was an unusual movement in the Forbidden Land. It was connected to the path to the outer realm, and some creatures came through such a passage and entered the Yang realm. The pure lands of the heavens revere the demon master. The 7 great saints of the demon race have come. Although we're of the younger generation, after following our elders, we also want to see how the ultimate evolver will be born in the Yang realm. Not long after, there were also people from the outer realm in another forbidden land who entered the Yang realm through a passage. They were a few great divine kings, but they were only of the younger generation. They came before the old fellow from the ancient land. They were high-spirited and very conceited. Some of the roads that had been barren for a long time had creatures roaming about. Among them, there were also people who mentioned Chowda. They actually already knew this name, and they weren't very friendly. Third Sect Master. Chapter 1368. It was a magnificent building, and the courtyard outside was filled with verdant trees. The birdcage was hanging on one of the trees. Ziluan had long since been forced out of her original form and became a bird in a cage. Her arrogance and optimism in the past had long since disappeared. Her eyes were filled with tears and melancholy. Chu Feng stared fixedly at her. Back then, that timid maid, who became very arrogant later on, was actually kept in a cage and treated like a bird. What kind of person was this? Anger surged in his eyes. Did that person know Ziluan's identity and did this on purpose? Or was it just to show off his so-called status and taste, so he raised a purple phoenix? The scene flashed by and passed by. It was only a certain region of a certain cave residence. Chu Feng controlled his emotions and calmed himself down. That was because, after watching carefully, he already understood that the cave residence was not simple and definitely belonged to an expert. Messing with my state of mind, he said softly. The person must have been saved. But he couldn't go now. That building was surrounded by beautiful mountain peaks and immortal mist. It was definitely not an ordinary place. Even the big dog in the courtyard was a divine king. It was useless even if he was angry now. That might be an important place of a sect, and it would be very difficult to break in. It's not that I don't care. I need to improve myself first. When I come out from that dangerous place, my strength will probably increase greatly. Then I'll go save her. Rather than being troubled, it was better to take action and improve his cultivation first. At that time, he would have the confidence to fight, kill, or break in. Chu Feng took a deep breath and memorized the name of that cave residence, Spiritual Mountain Cave Residence. He began to look up other things. First, he searched in the photon computer and then went to a cosmic brain to look through information. There were the crystallization of the blood, sweat, and tears of the past generations. There were special studies on the history of the Yang realm and the past of some forbidden lands. They were all open to the public. Chu Feng came here to look up the geography of the revered 8 trigrams furnace. He wanted to go there to refine his body and transform himself. He wanted to go through a great nirvana. He knew a little about the world of the living, but he was not a native. The reason why he knew that he could improve here was because he heard it from the 6-eared macaque. The monkey couldn't forget about it and was almost possessed. He said that his ancestor had contacted an important person. He and his sister, Mi Qing, would head to the supreme terrains, burn their true souls, forge an indestructible body, and attain the great sage Tao realm before attempting to break through to the mythical stage. One could well imagine how evil that place was. Once one withstood the special flames of the revered 8 trigrams furnace and didn't die, they would undergo a terrifying transformation in the end. In this regard, Chu Feng had a deep understanding of this. Back on Earth, that imitation of the terrain was just a crude imitation of the 8 trigrams furnace. Even so, it had caused him to mutate and unlock the fiery eyes. The flames on Earth and the special energy in the 8 directions couldn't be considered rare materials at all. In the Yang realm, there was a genuine supreme terrain, and this was of great importance. One had to know that this kind of natural domain was naturally born from heaven and earth. It was mysterious and terrifying, and its origins were astonishing. Even the stone jar had such a terrain map. One could imagine how extraordinary it was. Otherwise, why would it be recorded on the stone jar? Therefore, Chu Feng wanted to go in hopes of obtaining a fortuitous encounter. He carefully brought out all the information regarding the supreme terrain and studied it seriously. His brows immediately furrowed. It suspected that the flames pouring down from the outer realm formed a dangerous land. The flames gave birth to runes and gave rise to the supreme terrain. Just this paragraph revealed a lot of information, making Chu Feng astonished. Just what kind of fire was it that rolled down from the outer realm and naturally formed a terrifying mountain and river? Without a doubt, the revered 8 trigrams furnace was a forbidden land in the Yang realm. It was the same as the other 10 or so forbidden lands in the Yang realm. The difference was that very few creatures appeared in this terrain. Generally speaking, it didn't interfere with the ups and downs of the outside world and was very aloof. However, there were definitely creatures inside, and they were extremely terrifying. They were even more powerful than the masters of the other forbidden lands. According to reports, a 4th tribulation sparrow had been burned to death there, as well as a great evil spirit from the outer realm. Those who didn't submit would die an extremely miserable death there. Chu Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. The great evil spirit from the outer realm was suspected to be a celestial race. Even this kind of creature could be directly burned to death? Soon after, he continued to read and saw a few more shocking records. The so-called outer world might be the outer world of the 33 heavens. Chu Feng was startled at once. There really were 33 levels of heaven? What kind of zone was this? How were they divided? However, when he thought of the myriad worlds, he felt relieved. Although they were all legends and might be fake, there should be some origin after all. Chu Feng quickly flipped through the pages. There were too many annotations and records regarding the supreme terrain. For example, in the past, the Feather Emperor had gone there to temper his body and achieve a breakthrough. Chu Feng frowned. When he saw the records related to the Feather Emperor, his mood wasn't very good. Qing Yin had once said that she had someone she liked, and it was actually the prehistoric Feather Emperor who was known to be undefeated. Last time, the Feather Emperor appeared and slaughtered in all directions. He alone killed the overlord of the southern Shan province, and even blocked the joint attack of the old monk and others from the western He province. This person was simply too abnormal and excessively powerful. In this era, he was undoubtedly one of the key characters to become the ultimate expert. At the same time, Chu Feng also sighed. Qin Luoyin might never be able to return to the past, but where was their son, the little Taoist? Damn it, I, Chu Feng, have come into being and overturned all of you. With me here, do you still think you can achieve supreme results? I'll sweep you all to the ground. Chu Feng said indignantly. He felt inexplicably angry. He increasingly felt that he wasn't strong enough. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem for him to beat Qingshi's reincarnation, the undefeated Feather Emperor, the Soul River, the Martial Madman, and so on. For a full 6 days, Chu Feng forgot to eat and sleep. He poured all of his heart and soul into this place as he looked through all the ancient records regarding the supreme terrain. Moreover, he had even deduced which entities were inside. He could feel that although those entities hated to be disturbed by outsiders, they didn't completely take the terrain for themselves. They allowed others to step into the special area to temper themselves, but the prerequisite was that they couldn't be woken up. Chu Feng left this place and walked on the streets of the giant city under the hazy night sky. He watched flying saucers fly across the sky from time to time, leaving behind streams of flowing light. He entered a small cave residence that was open to the public at night, ordered a cup of wine, and sat quietly by himself. He was about to leave and begin his campaign from now on. What awaited him was blood and fire. This might be the last tranquility. Next, he would continuously improve himself. The golden wine was very pure and fragrant. Chu Feng was somewhat absent-minded. Was this the Yang realm? In a large city? Why did he feel like he had returned to Earth and was in a certain bar? Afterward, he discovered that he was slightly tipsy. Calling it wine was more like a spiritual liquid related to evolution. It could make one's soul light relax. Otherwise, how could ordinary wine make an evolver drunk? Sai Chu Zhongdi's supreme path is about to open. What unrivaled being, what undefeated legend, and what heavenly fairy? Are you guys ready? I'm coming. You guys better coil up for me if you're a dragon, and fold your bedding if you're a true fairy. Where's my son? He was really drunk and ordered the most expensive golden heavenly spirit wine. Even a celestial venerable would sometimes become slightly tipsy after drinking this thing, so he naturally couldn't bear it. He thought of the little Taoist and his parent. For a moment, he missed them very much and felt disappointed and frustrated. He was a person with parents and children, but now they were separated by life and death. Moreover, he might not necessarily be those people even if he reincarnated again. That was because he already understood that the entire so-called reincarnation might be a great conspiracy. It might not necessarily be true and was grasped in the palm of someone else's hand. There are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. Should I leave some of my bloodline behind? Otherwise, I'll be going to the forbidden area, and then I'll be going to war in more dangerous places. What if I die? Am I drunk? Why am I babbling nonsense? Chu Feng felt that he was a little unable to control himself. A drunk person walked over from the side and said, "Brother, what are you saying? You want to leave descendants? I understand. Haha, I'll help you introduce." He was very ambiguous and had a strange smile on his face. Get lost. My child's mother is at least a celestial venerable. Under normal circumstances, she'll also be a fairy. Go away. Even the evolver who walked over with the intention of making fun of him was dumbfounded. He was extremely speechless and finally mumbled, "Celestial venerable level entities don't give birth to descendants anymore. Even if they don't give birth, I'll let them," shouted Chu Feng. After that, he covered his mouth and quickly ran away. He felt that he was really drunk. What kind of nonsense was he talking about? Chu Feng escaped from this giant city. In this drunken state, he felt that the entire world he saw was a little different. Why was the mountain in the distance bleeding? Strange. Chu Feng sensed the abnormality. After he was slightly drunk, his fiery eyes seemed to be extremely strange. This was because his soul light was fluctuating very violently and very special, causing the things he saw to be a little different. Under a special soul light frequency, the fiery eyes will mutate. One can see the truth of the world in this state. Chu Feng's hair stood on end because he thought of this paragraph of record. He had once seen this when he was looking up information not long ago. The supreme terrain was most likely to burn out the fiery eyes. As a result, there were predecessors' painstaking efforts in this area. He was horrified. What was this situation? After that, he raised his head and saw that the sky was leaking. There was a big hole dripping blood. He saw the distant mountains dripping with blood and the earth was very dilapidated. This was a little different from the world he saw in his normal state. It was as if he couldn't see this part normally. This is the other side of the real world. After that, Chu Feng saw a few people with lustrous light flying away from the horizon. There were also people coming over here. Among them, there was a ball of light that was too resplendent. It could practically illuminate the heavens and the earth. It was even more glaring than the sun on normal days. You can see me? That most glaring ball of light flew over. There was a person in it. He walked like a dragon or a tiger and exuded power without being angry. He was like a son of heaven. Who are you? Chu Feng's hair stood on end. He had a feeling that this person was very unusual. Your face. After that ball of light approached, it quickly retreated a few steps as if it was very shocked. It stared at Chu Feng again and again before regaining its composure. In an instant, that person returned to normal and said, "On the day the gates of the netherworld opened, I, a lonely wild ghost, came out to take a breather." The netherworld? Chu Feng was dumbfounded. This was a place related to the Soul River. It was even a place connected to it. Where did this person come from? However, judging from his words, it seemed like he was just a ghost. Who are you exactly? Chu Feng asked. I was once unrivaled in 10 lifetimes. I was called a king in the human world for 10 lifetimes. Now that I'm out for a breather, I'm going back very soon. This person who was like a son of heaven said so. You guys, what exactly are your origins? Chu Feng looked at the figures in the distance. This person actually responded again and said, We're all dead people. It's been several eras. However, in theory, no one should be able to see us. They can't see the real world clearly. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.